Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the excuse me, the regular council meeting of Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Just before we get going, we do have two proclamations today to read out. The first is Workers' Compensation Board Day of Mourning, April 28th, 2021. Whereas April 28th is recognized across Canada as a day to mourn victims of workplace accidents and for the renewal of the pledge to make a safer workplace. And whereas in 2020, 150 Alberta workers died from injuries or disease related to the workplace. And whereas in honoring their memory, employers and workers can make a difference by working together to keep each other safe every day. And whereas the city of Beaumont recognizes April 28th as a day to mourn victims of workplace accidents and bring awareness for the need to establish safe conditions in the workplace for all, therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2021 as Workers' Compensation Board Day of Mourning in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, and encourage all employers and workers to recognize the importance of maintaining safe work environments, dated this 9th day of April 2021. Our second proclamation for this evening is Municipal Clerks Week, May 2nd to 8th, 2021. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, time-honored and vital part of the local government that exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides a professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And where it is most appropriate to recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk, now therefore be resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim May 2nd to 8th, 2021 as Municipal Clerks Week in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 23rd day of April, 2021. Ooh, it's going to be a long night if I keep getting tongue-tied. So is there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration has no changes to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. Can I get a member of council to move adoption of the agenda? Councillor Hendricks.
So move, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. We do have four items on the consent agenda tonight. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. 5A, regular council meeting minutes of April 13, 2021. 5B, special council meeting minutes of April 20, 2021. 5C, regular committee of the whole meeting minutes of April 20, 2021. And the regional initiatives update for information in 14A. Discussion on the motion. Okay, can I get the votes cleared from the last vote? Thank you. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. We have no members of the public registered for the open forum this evening. We have no public hearings, which brings us to item 7A, the auditor's report from Grant Thornton. Mr. DeBlanco.
So with us tonight is David Downey and Megan McConnon from Grant Thornton. They're the auditors, and they'll be presenting the audit strategy and results.
Thank you. And the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Terrific. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I am going to attempt to share my screen. We'll hope that that goes okay. I don't know if that has popped up for you. So we're happy to be here today. It's a pleasure to be back. I have myself, Megan McConnon. I'm the engagement partner on the audit, and with me is David Downey, who's the engagement senior manager. And so we're just hoping to run at a high level through our final report on the results of the audit for you, and we're happy to take any questions. So I'm just going to scroll right through to the executive summary. Couple of things to highlight here. Essentially, we are complete our audit at this point in time. It's just the last bit of wrap up. The purpose of this report is to cover off things that we're required to tell you under our Canadian auditing standards. And so we hope that covers everything that that you also might need to know from the point of the audit. Our audit approach is a risk-based approach, and so there is a summary in the appendices of that. Really all that means is we focus on areas of higher risk throughout the course of our audit. Doesn't mean we don't look at other things, it just we spend a little bit more time in areas that we deem to be higher risk from an audit perspective. And I'm actually going to throw it over to David. I think I saw his face on here. Actually,
yeah, thanks, Megan.
Thank you, David. Perfect.
Okay, so one of the biggest areas of change is obviously related to the COVID-19 impact on our audit risk. So as you see in the financial statements, there is a specific disclosure related to COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the city. And then we have reviewed the disclosure provided by management, and we concur with the nature and the extent of the disclosure. So it just lays out the impact it's had. The significant risks, like Megan said, we use a risk-based approach. So we have a fraud risk in revenue recognition. That's a presumed risk. That's in pretty much every audit, and it just relates to the risk that revenue will be not correctly stated, misstated. The way we respond to that is we provide sampling on our tax and the water and sewer revenues. We provide a detailed analytical, and we've noted no issues related to the revenue recognition. The other risk we have in the audit is related to management override of controls. Again, that's a presumed risk in the job, which relates to the fact that General Manager of Corporate Services and the Director of Finance have the ability to post and approve their own journal entries, which makes it very difficult for us to track if management has the ability to post and approve. We do testing around it, and we've noted no issues. We didn't find any journal entries related that caused us any sort of concern or anything like that. The other issue is related to accounting practices, accounting estimates. So obviously there are estimates in the file. Estimates, because of their nature, because they aren't necessarily 100% verifiable, contain an elevated level of risk. Significant estimates in this file relate to the collectability of the AR, which is tax and water and sewer, the useful lives of property and equipment, and then the amount of accrued liabilities in the assessment of the contingencies. We've reviewed these estimates and we found no problems with them either. Zooming through this now, we have an adjustment. So there was an adjustment that we identified throughout the audit, which relates to a developer loan receivable and the correct accounting for it under PSAS 3050 loan receivable. That amount needed to be discounted as it's being collected in the future. So that's what the adjustment relates to. It's a relatively large number, but it strictly relates to a non-cash item. No uncorrected misstatements. So everything in the audit has been adjusted. The disclosure we found to be adequate on the financial statements. Moving through this. Internal controls. Based on our audit, we did not identify any reportable observations on internal controls. For cybersecurity, this is obviously a heightened area with more people working remotely. So we want to just highlight that we want to make sure that your cybersecurity is at an appropriate level, and because it puts
Just
your reputation at risk. Yeah, it's
on
your
the radar
radar
of council as well. It is an area we're definitely seeing a lot more issues pop up.
Thank you. Yeah, and then independence. We have identified no information regarding our independence that in our judgment should be brought to your attention. So we're independent on this job. Other than that, technical updates. As I always say, if you can't sleep tonight, you can read through the accounting and the assurance updates. The accounting, nothing maybe incredibly major. All of these standards also were postponed related to COVID-19, and they are provided for you in the appendices.
And the rest just brings us through to the appendices, which just give you a bit more information on our approach, and also just on the additional level of risk that another area that we focused on was payables and accruals, making sure that the expenses were complete in the year end, and there was nothing to note there. And then a draft of our auditor's report, which we will sign once council approves the financial statements, which is the last step, and once we get our last letters from management. And a copy then also of our management representation letter, which we will ask management to sign at the conclusion of the audit, which really is just written representations of everything we've asked during the course of the audit. And then the final thing is just the appendices on cybersecurity and the standards. So we are happy to answer any questions on any of that. We know that was kind of the fly through. It's always the month that Curtis gets to spend with us all rolled into 3 minutes of a report, which is not quite as painful as I'm sure he feels it is. So.
Oh, we do appreciate that, and it is always interesting when yeah, literally months of work get boiled down to a 10-minute presentation and 20 or 30 page report. So we do appreciate all the work you've done, and it's nice to see that we're operating in a pretty good way. And so that's always nice to see from year to year. We don't have any major concerns. I don't have any questions personally, but I will open it up to members of council for questions of our auditors. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the presenters. I'm getting a bit of a reputation for looking sometimes down in the weeds and not getting the whole picture. But in this case, I definitely get the whole picture, and I think the audit is great and good news. The question I have is about acronyms. So when I read the agenda, you already know, Megan, I think you know what I'm going to say. What does TCWG and RTAC stand for? Because
I know, isn't that terrible? We use them all the time. So RTAC is the report to the audit committee, which is normally who we report to. In this case, not exactly accurate. And TCDW is those charged with governance. So those who are not management, who are responsible for oversight. I apologize. It is terrible. We just sneak those in. I don't really know why.
I had it in my head that it was the Transportation Advisory Committee. So I was like, okay, way off. So thank you very much for enlightening me.
Absolutely. Apologies for that.
Councillor Stout, Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. To the presenters, just back to your comments about internal controls and the audit process, and also the timing. You basically wrap up your audit based on December of 2020, as I understand it. When you say you've done sort of a tacit internal audit control process, what does that mean?
So when we do our audit, we look at controls really from a financial reporting perspective to determine whether or not they support our ability to sign off on the financial statements. So there are some restrictions. That means we don't go into operating controls and we don't look at internal controls in every area. We really focus on kind of the key audit areas, mostly around revenue, cash disbursements, those areas, just to make sure that there's no major holes that we need to be concerned about from an accuracy of information perspective. So this is not a full audit of your internal controls. That is possible to do, but that's not the case here. It is really only to support our audit approach and also the ability to report on the financial statements. So if we do catch something that we think would be significant and cause the risk of a material error in the financial statements, we would bring that to your attention. And that's what we consider to be reportable issues. There was none of those issues that we noted during the course of our audit that we need to bring to your attention.
Right, given that where you're at is not in the weeds, so to speak, with respect to the actual costs of let's call it, as you put it, reporting and the reporting process, right?
Yeah, so we can't look at everything, and believe me, Curtis does not want us looking at every single transaction. So
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we're heavy into construction, in Beaumont, and my question would have been around that and how the reporting process works around a construction project, and whether or not you saw anything there that needed some tidying up. But I'm hearing that you haven't gotten to that level.
No, we wouldn't have necessarily gone into kind of your whole process around it. What we would understand is how that gets recorded in your books. Primarily, that would be our focus.
And our latest approach to, perhaps a line of credit with the city of Beaumont, again, isn't part of your your conversation at this time. So thank
No,
you.
really, unfortunately, the audit is, I always say we're a bit of we look at the historical primarily. And so we look at how things get into your financial statements, and that's the bulk of our focus.
Right. And one other one is just the fact that we've gone from a authority to commission on the landfill piece, which used to be a note to reader with other auditors. That doesn't need to be on this audit this year. So thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to go back to page 4 of the audit report, which is 22 of 280, whatever it is, in the agenda package. And you referred to the adjustments. You referred to it not being to it being a significant amount. It's $2 million. I just want to understand exactly what was adjusted here. Is this an amount that was recorded as having been received in one year when it was received in the next, or am I oversimplifying that?
No, so this was an amount that the original accounting for it was to record it all as revenue. And after some discussions with Curtis, we actually assessed that a portion should actually be receivable. And so it was just a late adjustment that was made by management to move that amount to a receivable amount that will be received in by the city over the term of the developer agreement, which, if I recollect correctly, is 15 years.
Okay, so it was recorded as revenue, as money that we'd received, but it should, and it's been adjusted because we haven't got it yet.
Yes,
we
so
will
it's
receive
actually,
it in the
yes,
future.
Yes, it's actually it was expended out and is essentially a loan receivable back in that the city will get back in.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. I appreciate the clarification.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stout. I see no further hands raised. So yeah, quick, easy. I love it when stuff goes this well, and it's all good news. So appreciate once again the hard work of the auditors and Curtis, you two, for supporting the audit. We do appreciate that, and we'll say thank you for this evening, and we'll be seeing you again next year.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thanks so
and
much.
A big thank you to management as well.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to business item 8A, 2020 audited consolidated financial statements. Mr. DeBlanco, I assume.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. Before you is a report requesting adoption of the 2020 financial statements, as well as requesting approval to transfer the 2020 surpluses to their respective reserves. Also, as part of this report, I'll go through a high-level summary of the highlights and budget variances. So on the municipal operating budget, the city realized a revenue shortfall of approximately $400,000. The shutdown of recreation facilities and childcare services due to COVID-19 were key contributors to this. The city's permits, licenses, and fees revenue was also $500,000 under budget. These shortfalls are partially offset by the $1.4 million of municipal operating support received from the provincial government. This unbudgeted grant is reflected in the statements in the government transfers section. Throughout 2020, admin has sought to reduce expenses corresponding to the COVID-related revenue loss. The results of this approach yielded a reduction of municipal operating expenses of $1.6 million. The operating budget utilized transfers from reserve in the amount of $5.2 million and transferred $2.4 million back to the reserves. Reserve draws required were $900,000 under the budgeted amount. At the completion of the year-end audit, the 2020 operating surplus is approximately $600,000. Admin is recommending that the municipal operating surplus be transferred to the Economic Development Reserve to provide one-time funding for opportunities to enhance the business environment within the city and support continued economic growth within the city of Beaumont. Independent of the municipal operating surplus is the net library surplus of $37,000 that admin is recommending be transferred to the library building reserve. Next, on the utility operations budget, the city generated a net surplus of approximately $1.1 million. This net surplus is comprised of $700,000 for wastewater, a deficit of $18,000 for the water utility, and a surplus of $400,000 for the solid waste utility. contributing factor to the surplus is the 2020 solid waste budget included cost for a new solid waste contract. This contract was not executed until September, and a savings of approximately $400,000 was realized. Administration recommends that this utility surplus be transferred to the utility reserve. On the 2020 capital budget, there was approximately $400,000 under budget overall, net of amounts carried forward. These savings are primarily related to renewal projects that came in under budget, notably neighborhood renewal and the Ken Nickel roof repair. Any remaining funds in renewal projects will remain in the reserve and be utilized or will be available for funding future renewal projects. Unspent budgets on capital projects that were still underway as of December 31st were approved to be carried forward at the February 23rd regular council meeting. Next, on reserves, as stated previously, the operating budget required reserve draws of $5.2 million, which is $900,000 under the budget amount of $6.1 million. This decrease is driven from phase-in contingency funds that were not required in areas like transit. The reserve draw of $9,000,000 was required, $900,000 was required for utility operations, with a slight variance there, which was carried forward to the 2021 budget to complete some CCTV work. From a capital reserve perspective, $5.2 million of a budgeted 6.1 was required to fund capital projects for the 2020 year. As noted previously, these savings were on the neighborhood renewal program and Ken Nickel roof repair. After transferring interest earned, the closing balance of all reserves will be approximately $2.2 million higher than the forecast from the 2020 amended budget. In summary, the net impact of the 2020 year is a net municipal operating surplus of approximately $600,000. Once again, admin is recommending the surplus be transferred to the Economic Development Reserve. Library operating surplus of $37,000 that admin is recommending be transferred to Library Building Reserve. And a utility operation surplus of approximately $1.1 million, which admin is recommend transferring to the utility reserve. This time I can take any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blanco. Really do appreciate the work that's gone into this. Because there's 4 motions ahead of us, we'll break this down into, we'll ask for questions and then we'll start through the 4 motions. So we'll open it up to questions from members of council on the audited financial statements. Councillor Munkoff-Swain.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And first, is my audio okay? I put my headphones in just to try to improve that. Is that sounding better? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we got you.
Thanks. So first up, Curtis, sorry, Mr. DeBlanco, a great year end. The crazy numbers that you're able to achieve. And so full credit to you and your team. If you asked me back in March or April, when we're going through the outlook of this year or of last year, if we would get anywhere close to this, respectfully, I wouldn't have given you guys a chance. So great job to your team and administration for hitting some of these targets. It's yeah, really impressive. I did have a question on the capital side of things, and it's probably explained. I don't quite understand it. You talk about there's some capital budget that is going to be moved forward, and due to the fact that the neighborhood renewal program, Ken Nickel, we were under budget. Any remaining funds in these renewal projects goes into the reserve. Any unspent capital projects still underway were approved at our meeting. I get that. I guess my question is, if we've got a decision that's going to be coming up in front of us in a month or so, or maybe less, with regards to the West 80 acres. And we're going to be, I imagine that the ask, we've approved $1.2 million for that. And from what we're hearing anyway, it sounds like that ask is going to be higher than that. Could you just speak to, is there any way that any of the surplus that has come forward, whether it be the capital or any other mechanism, could potentially be applied, to that if we need to get there?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor Munkoff-Swain, on that specific project, admin will evaluate what the funding sources are available. Because it is a growth project and kind of our budget guidelines say we should be using grant funds for growth projects, we wouldn't necessarily recommend utilizing any of the unutilized reserve funds for that project, but it would be an option for admin to explore before providing a recommendation to council on that item.
Yeah, I guess so. That's the answer I think I was looking for. I didn't want us to be in a position where we have to make a decision in a couple of weeks, and we're potentially taking a lever away, an option away from us. So what I'm hearing you saying is that that most likely wouldn't be an option that administration would be recommending anyway, and would need to go back and look through the grant process. I wasn't clear there when you mentioned some of these projects that were pushed forward, whether we had used grant funding for any of those and whether we kept and we retained any of those grants. But you answered that question for me. So I just wanted to make sure that we had all the options available to us, given that West 80 Acres conversation we're about to have. So thanks for answering that. And again, great job getting us to this point. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Good evening, Mr. DeBlanco. I also echo Councilor Markov-Swain's comments about how this year turned out fiscally for us. It's a great surprise and a great work done. One quick question, if you don't mind. So if we take the recommendation of moving the $631,000 surplus into economic development reserve, what will that put the reserve at after you deposit the 631? What will the total number be? If you don't mind, please. Either questioning what is it right now plus the 600 or the number after the 600, whatever's easier to find, please. Just curious what that number will now become.
Through to Councillor Daniluk, the current balance of the economic development reserve is approximately 1.3 million. Transferring the operating surplus to it would bump it up to 1.9 million.
Okay, great. You may be able to answer this next question briefly, Mayor Stewart, please. Based on information that being roughly 1.9 million in the reserve, is that the level it should be at, or is it slightly above what it should be at, or is it still slightly below what it should be at after the 631 is put into it? Just a ballpark recommendation on that, if that reserve is where it's supposed to be after the 631 is put into it.
Right, through to Councillor Daniluk. So admin evaluated all the balance of the reserves, compared them to the maximums and minimums within the reserve policy. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the exact minimum was for the economic development, but there was a number of reserves considered on where to transfer the surplus. The normal one that has been used in the past would have been financial stabilization, but we evaluated that the balance of that was somewhat healthy. So we considered economic development as the most appropriate spot to transfer the funds.
Okay, great. That's the answer I anticipated. I was thinking about the financial reserve, but you answered my question. So thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Mr. Blanco. No more questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniluk. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart, and thank you, Mr. DeBlanco. Again, excellent report and excellent turnout, excellent outcome. My question is about utility operations, and I actually have two questions, one unrelated to each other. So utility operations, if I understand correctly, the surplus is going into the reserve, and we are getting a new contract we have a new contract in 2021. My question is around, have we put the right amount of money into the budget this year so that that's not going to happen again?
So through to Councillor Barnhart, we foresaw this coming as part of the 2021 budget, and we've made adjustments for those amounts, including the entire amount of the contract, and factoring in an area where it was maybe underfunded, and that would be reserve transfers. So had a similar reserve transfer been factored into the 2020 budget as there is in the 21 budget, we wouldn't necessarily see the surplus that we're seeing here.
I think I understand.
In short, to answer your question, yes.
Yes, okay. Then let me switch to something I understand a little bit better than utilities, and that is the recreational and youth programs. I believe it's on page 69. I'm just trying to scroll there to make sure I've got the right page number. And it was, I know I'm into the weeds here, but it's a question that I just couldn't quite get my head around. It's about deferred revenue for recreation and youth programs. Wonder if you could give me some idea, if you know, maybe that's something to come back later. It's on page 69 at the bottom of, it's a note to the consolidated financial statements. It's note 5, deferred revenue.
Yep.
Can you give me some idea what that is?
Just to clarify the question, you're just curious what the balance is composed of?
No, I'm wondering what do we mean by deferred revenue for child and youth, for recreational and youth programs? What's that, grant money, or what is that?
So that'd be funds received for rec programs, facility bookings, any gym memberships, anything prepaid in advance for that hasn't been realized yet.
Okay, so people are paying us to book facilities even though they haven't used them yet. So it's advanced booking
Right.
fees. Okay,
Yes.
that's a pretty significant amount of money there. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Barnhart. Okay, I see no further questions for hands. So we'll start with the recommendations. And as we get going, once again, this is a great news story. It's always nice to finish on the positive side in a reasonable fashion. When, as Councilor Monkoff-Swain alluded to, if we were having this conversation this time last year, we were thinking pretty bleak thoughts about where our budgets were going to land. So we really do appreciate all the hard work that admin went through to mitigate this, and the support that we received from the provincial government to also help mitigate that problem and help us land where we need it to be. Is there a member of council willing to move that council adopt the 2020 audited consolidated financial statements as presented? Councilor Danlock.
So move, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. All right, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, I assume. Yep, that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council transfer the 2020 net municipal operating surplus of $631,133 to the Economic Development Reserve? Also, Councilor Danlock.
So move, your worship. I'm good now. Will somebody else take the next two? Thank you. But this one, so move. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move that council transfer the 2020 net utility operating surplus of $1,073,900 to the utility reserve? Councilor Stout.
So moved, your worship.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move the council transfer the 2020 net library operating surplus of $37,157 to the library building reserve? Councilor Barnhart, we'll share it around a bit.
Just want to mix it up a little. So moved, your worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor, call the question. And that carries unanimously. Whew. 4 down. Thank you very much, Mr. Blanco. Appreciate it. This was a really good news story for our municipality, and we do appreciate all the work that you and your team do. Which brings us to item 8B, 50th Street Functional Planning Study Request for Decision. Mr. Rates, whenever you're ready.
So good evening, Council. Administration has a brief verbal report to provide and then is able to answer any questions that come as part of the discussion, and has the graphics, maps, figures ready to go and to be referred to for that discussion if need be. So the report presented is in response to a motion passed by Council on April 13th, 2021, that directed administration to summarize the planning context of 50th Street. And so administration has produced a planning and policy direction review that outlines options for arterial roads and describes impacts to speed limits and service roads on 50th Street. There's only one. Administration will briefly review each planning document explaining its application to the 50th Street corridor, and then provide additional notes on speed limits and service road concepts. So the first planning document to review briefly would be the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan, which provides regional planning direction. And the main item to highlight here is that it outlines this area around the corridor within the metropolitan area, meaning that over time urbanization is anticipated to occur in a way that aligns with the growth plan's direction for denser and more diverse communities. The next document would be the Capital Region Integrated Regional Transportation Master Plan, which also provides regional planning direction. It classifies 50th Street as an arterial roadway, which is described as carrying higher volumes of traffic. And so in corridor planning and operation, it advises against providing direct access to individual parcels, and that spacing intersection varies, but is generally 200 to 400 meters in distance. Of note, with this specific plan, it is currently being updated, but it is anticipated based on the drafts shared so far that, you know, the planning direction for this corridor is not being shaped radically or redirected. It will generally reflect what has just been described. The next document to review is the Intermunicipal Planning Framework, which is a sub-regional planning document and was a product of the annexation process. And so this is a framework that has been agreed to between the City of Edmonton, Leduc County, and the City of Beaumont. It also designates this area, this corridor for urbanization as a result of annexation processes, and demarcates this corridor as providing employment in residential areas, direct access from employment area sites to arterial roads, as 50th Street has been identified within this plan, is described as being directed to be very limited, or limited with traffic directed through internal roadways first to key intersections. And this framework describes 50th Street as a regional arterial, which is a multi-lane roadway that provides key access through the study area and is regionally significant beyond the study area boundaries as well. So outside of that sub-regional planning context beyond. The next plan is the Municipal Development Plan, a local statutory plan that guides growth and development within the City of Beaumont. It identifies the annexed areas along 50th Street as future growth areas warranting further planning. And the Municipal Development Plan identifies 3 intersections or crossing locations on 50th Street between Township Road 510 and the North City limit. That are, of course, similar to the prior point, warrant further study. The Transportation Master Plan is a local non-statutory plan. It outlines the classification of 50th Street as a arterial and a regionally significant roadway. It is also described as being 2 to 4 lanes in each direction with a target speed between 40 to 70 kilometers per hour in the future. And the Transportation Master Plan also outlines that in 3 to 5 years, administration will develop a major road infrastructure investment plan that will further guide roadway renewal in the longer term. The final plan or functional study we'll review is the 50th Street Functional Study, which was a sub-regional study approved by Town of Beaumont Council at the time by resolution. And so the 50th Street Functional Study, the main point to share here is that the analysis north of Township Road 510 is predicated on the desire of both the Town of Beaumont and Leduc County to preserve the essentially rural setting on either side of 50th Street corridor between Township Road 510 and the City of Edmonton limits at the time. So that would have been the portion we are discussing today. And because of jurisdictional changes over the past 5 years and the intended land use planning direction shifting from that rural focus to an urban focus, the 50th Street Functional Study is no longer the primary transportation planning document for this portion of the corridor. With regard to service roads, the report administration has provided indicates that the use of service roads to maintain higher speeds along 50th Street requires greater distance between intersections and significant bulbing at intersections to accommodate queuing and storage space. And further, the introduction of service roads would be inconsistent with access management plans, as well as be inconsistent with the introduction of active modes along the 50th Street corridor. With regard to speed limits, the report indicates that as urban development continues in Beaumont and in Edmonton along the 50th Street corridor, further technical reviews of the corridor to determine the proper speed limit changes and roadway design improvements will be undertaken. as a part of the land development process. Beaumont controls only a 1.6 kilometer length of 50th Street, and therefore it is crucial to collaborate with the City of Edmonton to ensure a seamless transition in both the cross sections and the speed limits between the two municipalities as urbanization occurs along this corridor. And so planning direction for this and guidance is provided within that intermunicipal planning framework most primarily as described above. And so just to briefly reach our conclusion, administration's view is that the changes to 50th Street regarding access point and speed limits is consistent with the city's current statutory plans and overall policy framework. Planned urbanization of the northern area of the city of Beaumont, north of 510 to the city's northern boundary with the city of Edmonton, will require these changes to provide connections to, from, and along the corridor with the intent of maintaining safety and efficiency while also offering viable transportation choices for residents. Limiting access points to urbanized areas to the 3 identified locations ensures consistency with the planning and policy direction and supports both regional and local trips via different modes. So administration recommends that council receive this report as information and is able to provide a response to any questions that members of council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rates. We do appreciate the presentation and the comprehensive report that's been provided to council on 50th Street and the planning, the functional study and subsequent updates and new plans that have affected that stretch of road. Just a reminder to council that there are no decisions to be made tonight on with this item as to how this road's to function. This is largely an informational item, so this is specifically for council to ask questions of clarification and have a little bit of discussion and to move on from there. So we'll open it up for questions and then follow with the motion to receive as information. Are there are there questions from members of council? Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, thank you, and thank you for the caveat prior to the starting of my submission. To Mr. Rates, thank you for your oversight and overview of the overall package with respect to the 50th Street functional study and the transportation corridor. You've offered certain dates and times relative to how the nuance of 50th Street functional study plays in to the current dates that we are working within, and as a result, I believe you're making the argument that 50th Street functional study is old news and we've moved on. If I understand that correctly, I take you back, sir, to the board order MGB 012/16, which is in the matter of an application by the town of Beaumont, the province of Alberta, to annex certain territory line immediately adjacent thereto, and thereby its separation from Leduc County. And I just go to the summary. After examining the submissions from the town of Beaumont, Leduc County, the city of Edmonton, the city of Leduc, affected landowners and other interested parties, the Municipal Government Board, the MGB, makes the following recommendations for the reasons set out in the board report, shown as Appendix D on this order. And just to give you some latitude in terms of dates and times, and some understanding, this was January 1st, 2017. So if I take you to the full order, and I'm not going to read it for the requirement of brevity, but however, I just want to take you to Appendix D. And Appendix D states clearly, Municipal Government Board report to the Minister of Municipal Affairs respecting the town of Beaumont proposed annexation of territory from Leduc County. It has a table of contents, it has an executive summary and introduction, role of the MGB, the annexation notice, the preliminary public hearing and the overview, the pre-merit hearing process and the procedural matters, the pre-merit hearing process, procedural matters, scope of submissions by the city of Edmonton, questioning of witnesses by the city, summation and argument by the city. Then we have Part 5, summary of the merit hearing, application background issues, intermunicipal cooperation, land requirement, time horizon, population projections, household size, new and infill densities relative to the targets under the CRGP, residential land requirement, non-residential land requirement, gross up factors, servicing considerations, transportation networks. And if I take you to that document, which is page 67 of the overall document, speaks clearly about a very fresh 50th Street functional study, not something that's been updated, and other landowner and public concerns. And within that is the public hearings, which also included for people like the Beaumont Corridor Society and others who did make public presentations to this hearing process. My point at the last meeting regarding 50th Street functional study is that this is a document that was brought forward to bear by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. The orders have been fulfilled. The agreements have been placed. All the affected parties have essentially signed off. And I was expecting that we're moving forward now on the basis of this document. I'm hearing today that 50th Street functional study does not play a role in this document because it's beyond the best before date. I'm hearing today that anything past 5 years is no longer in the best before date, but this isn't. This still sits within, given it was fresh in 2017. And I'm hearing today that we're talking about a 40 to 70 kilometer zone, which I would argue flies in the face of this order. So there's my problem with this whole package. And I might add the amount of time and effort and debate that went into creating this order should be recognized as we move forward with the development of our community. This package is how we started the conversation with the entire annexation piece. And this package, I think, should be relied heavily on the move as we move forward. And I don't believe that given the legalization or the legalese or this yada, 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 in terms of what you can do with the document, I'm just saying the spirit of it's clear as to where this document was going. And what I'm sensing here and what I'm getting out of this conversation now is we're not meeting the intent of the spirit of this document. So that's the rub I have with this. Thank you.
Mr. H, Ms. Dargy.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, as part of administration's review, we did also undertake a refresher with the annexation and with the MGB, or the Municipal Government Board orders regarding the annexation process for both the town's annexation and then subsequently the City of Edmonton's annexation. And within the transportation network discussion from the board's decision, it is noted that the functional planning study exists, but it is also noted that the regional planning direction provides direction that would differ from what is provided in that functional planning study. And there's, I think, a further understanding that, as explained within our presentation, that the functional planning study is, the basis of that planning study is that road areas north of 510. It is the desire of the communities who hold jurisdiction over those roads to keep those in a rural setting when the functional study is to be applied. So now that the city has moved away from that context and has planned that area for growth, the functional planning study is out of step with what is envisioned for that area. So the recommendations for how intersection spacing and roadway design work are based on seeing rural areas on the other side of the road, which is not the case that we are in now. And so that is that kind of transition point that administration is trying to explain here. But I think I would just take a step back and also state that, you know, the principles, the administration understands the principles of that document, and you know, that is embedded within the transportation master plan that we have now and the municipal development plan that we have now as well, that focuses on providing safe and efficient connections. And that is, you know, rationale for why what has been approved limits access points to only 3 locations. If there's one thing administration can stress, is that this corridor of 50th Street north of 510 will look a lot different than 50th Street looks south of 510, where instead of having direct access points to parcels, like we see with some commercial development along your south of 510, the focus of high-level planning direction and subsequent proposed area structure plans or statutory land use documents is to focus access points to 3 specific locations, which is only one more than what was envisioned within the functional planning study, to focus access for those communities that will develop in the newly urbanized areas, focus them to only 3 locations so that transport along that corridor can still be provided in a safe and efficient way. So hopefully that addresses broadly the explanation of how that transition occurred and how the principles of that document that were baked into that engagement process and subsequently the functional planning study still come through in what has been proposed and is currently the planning direction for the corridor now.
Yes, excuse me, but to the point of the speed, I've heard now today, which is different than our last discussion, that we're now down to 40 kilometers an hour potentially from 80. And I appreciate you throwing the word safety all over this conversation, and next thing, this thing will be a pedway. My point is that you have to respect why this thing was developed as an 80 kilometer zone, why it's a 4-laner, why it was developed with the alignment that it had, why this all came together, and how it is possible that we've gone from that to what you've stated, which is a potential 40 to 70 kilometer zone tops in place as compared to the original document. Then I say, hey, we have got to go back to our public, not surprise anybody, because when the signs change, and they will, and explain to them, well, apparently it was under this area structure plan where this whole thing changed. And yes, appreciate all the open houses and all the debates and all the conversations, but new plans have aligned us to a 40 to 70 kilometer zone because of safety. I challenge that.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the range that's established within the transportation master plan does at the high end only result in a reduction of 10 kilometers per hour. And that range is established within the transportation master plan, which is a non-statutory document and provides general planning direction for the municipality, but is different in nature than, from a statutory planning direction, which provides that stronger planning direction that is to be followed. So that is a range within a non-statutory plan, and that range is based, the decided speed is going to be based on the land use planning context in the area. And so we'll see that arterials are stretched throughout the community. And in some areas, a 40 kilometer per hour speed limit may make sense if an arterial roadway is going through a residential neighborhood, or a portion of roadway with several access points, a portion of the community with many community facilities that result in people walking around. I think what we see with this arterial roadway within the community is that since access points have been limited to only 3 locations, and access and crossing points for that matter, we'll likely end up at the higher end of that range, because the land use planning context along the corridor, it does not demand or result in a lower speed being required, because access points are more focused in locations and there's less potential for crossing and that kind of thing. So hopefully that provides further background on what that range looks like and how it is likely to be applied in this context.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that there's complete discretion on all of that. Won't be statutory in the sense that it'll come to council. This is a planning document, and men will decide what this speed limit is. And we as councillors and citizens will have to enjoy whatever the outcome is, because we have no way of enforcing what we thought was a well-crafted document that kept us free and clear of anything like this moving forward. Those who are planning to work up against our property lines in terms of our 4-lane road, and that asset is ours. It doesn't belong to anybody else, right? It's our asset. We're not turning the asset over to a developer. And we're not bringing a developer in so that he can decide, well, as a result of the way I want to configure, you got to slow your road down. No, you better figure out a way to get onto our road with the speed limit that was posted. That's the way it should go. But that's not what's happening. So if that's how this is going to play out, then we have to absolutely get out to the public and say, listen, this is the long-term plan. This is not how this is playing out in terms of the way this road is going to be factored in. And I think that's really important to ensure that the public understands this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. I see no further hands raised for questions or comment. So I will move that council receive this report as information. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Rates. Brings us to item 9A, Bylaw 994-21, Larive Area Structure Plan, second and third. Is that you again, Mr. Rates?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you're up.
Yes, so good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and all other attendees of tonight's council meeting. Administration just has a brief verbal report to provide for this, just presenting second and third reading of Bylaw 994-21 for your consideration. Administration's view is that this area structure plan is consistent with the city's overall policy framework. A review period was held for the area structure plan and was completed for internal departments, external departments, and agencies, area landowners, as well as the public broadly. Administration is of the opinion that the applicant has ensured consistency with the city's overall policy framework and has addressed any concerns that were raised in that circulation process. The area structure plan was also approved via the Edmonton Metropolitan Board regional evaluation framework process earlier in April, and a public hearing was held for this application in accordance with the Act on April 13th, 2021. And so it is administration's recommendation that the council give second and third reading to this area structure plan tonight, and we're able to provide answers to any questions as they may arise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rates. Appreciate that. So I'll kick it off. I will move that council give second reading to Bylaw 994-21, Larive Area Structure Plan, and open it up to questions and comments from council, starting with questions. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, to Mr. Rates, then, based on our previous discussion, how does 50th Street get impacted by this area structure plan?
So through your worship, to Councillor Hendricks, the specific impacts would be determined by technical analysis that's provided within transportation impact assessments and other similar studies that are completed in conjunction with an area structure plan, the neighborhood structure plan, and then the subsequent subdivision and redistricting, that entire land development application process. So administration doesn't have a direct response for what the specific impact to the corridor will be, outside of the fact that over time, those three access points will be added along the corridor. In the short term, the access point added at the center point, and over the decades as the area begins to build out and develop, the subsequent access points would be added as well. And with the addition of those access points, speed limits and roadway design would also change. But those determinations are based on technical reports that are produced by transportation engineers.
So to your point then, will change, so 80 kilometers will disappear.
So through your worship, to Councillor Hendricks, if that is the result, or if that is the determination of those reports, then the speed limit may be reduced from 80 kilometers per hour in certain segments of the corridor, likely in the vicinity of where the access points will be added. Likely, that first access point, there may be a speed limit change if that's the result of the study in the shorter term as development undertakes, and then slowly those changes will begin to shake out in near the rest of the access points as well.
So, or you state as a baseline to this developer that road stays at 80 kilometers, you need to design to that.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the city is not able to make that direct demand. It is more so based on the results of technical analysis that indicate that, you know, based on an access point being added at this location, the speed limit may need to change. The city couldn't mandate that an unsafe speed be forced to occur at an intersection if it isn't to be safe. So it needs to rely on that technical analysis.
No, I get all that. And Highway 2 is also an example of that. So, you know, and thankfully we're not messing around with that speed limit based on a potential developer working off to the side on one side or the other. But in this particular case, that's back to my point. We seem to be bending to this developer. We're not laying out, like, that road was there. It's been there from the beginning. Why isn't he designing to our road instead of us having to accommodate whatever he wants in terms of design? I don't understand that.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the intended look and feel of that corridor is outlined within the planning framework, which we've described within that report to council. And that planning framework has latitude to see the corridor change in the future, and the corridor would need to change in the future as a result of urbanization occurring. The corridor as it is right now is based on it being in a rural setting going into the future, but that is not the vision that the city has established for those areas, as well as neighboring municipalities and the region overall has established for those areas. So due to urbanization occurring, the corridor will change in the future, and the policy and planning framework that the city has established guides those decisions and is the city's direction for how change will occur going forward.
Right. So to my point about the Municipal Government Board order, this happened in 2017. That's pretty fresh. And Beaumont was a very active participant in this. So, but apparently Beaumont has changed its mind since this document has been produced. Is that correct?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the annexation, like the board order, discusses the 50th Street functional planning study and also states that there are other regional planning directions provided within different documents, and that ultimately, as urbanization occurs throughout the corridor, the context or the application of these planning studies and policy directions will evolve to reflect the changing land use context of that area.
Right. So to the summary document, if you will, the Municipal Government Board makes the following recommendation for the reasons set out in the board report, shown as Appendix D of the order, which speaks to the transportation network. Yep. So this is a document that was the Lieutenant Governor in council orders. So that's why I'm quite shocked that, 4 years later, we're heading in another direction.
So through your worship,
just we're having the same conversation over and over. So I appreciate the points you're making, Councillor Hendricks. But sooner or later we got to get to a resolution here. So yeah, is there a further clarifying question? Because I think admin's answered that one already a couple of times tonight.
No, I think I've made my point. I think we need to go out to the public and tell them what's happening here. To suggest that we've had an open house, a public engagement and process whereby everybody understands what's about to happen at 50th Street, I'd argue no. That road is critical to our development, is critical to people wanting to travel in and out of Beaumont. If we're gonna hamstring that thing down to 40 kilometers an hour, which is exactly against what the report said and the order said, and all the reports that came in from all the participants in this document who suggested that this cannot happen. And it took into account urbanization. It took into account where we're at, which is only 4 years ago. that now we're sitting with this, this incredible ask to change it completely and knock it down to potentially 40 kilometers an hour. I couldn't support that. So thank you.
Fair enough, Councillor. I do appreciate the comments. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to piggyback on a couple of comments made by Mr. Rates a few moments ago. If you would join me, please, on attachment 3, which says figure 6, land use concept in the document. And I just want to get my head around some of the suggestions. And I think people who were concerned about 50th Street going north, some people on social media, some people actually phoned me, had a concern. They're focused on the potential of 40 kilometers, not the 40 to 70 range. They're focused on the very low end, anticipating the entire 50th Street will be 40 kilometers from 510 up to the city of Edmonton border. So people are taking an extreme view. But for example, on this document, we're seeing the 3 intersections along the 50th from the area structure plan here. So you're suggesting we have to have the traffic engineers or the appropriate people to determine, for example, in the attachment I'm looking at now, from 510 going north on 50 to the very first intersection there of the 3 going north, they'll determine what the rate of speed should be between 510 and the first intersection based on their study of traffic flow and commercialization of that area. And then they'll do the same going to the next intersection and so on. Is that a correct assessment of your earlier comment that will dictate what the speed limit should be, which may well be 70, not just 40, correct? If I could have you interject on that, please.
Yeah, so through your worship to Councillor Daniluk, that is roughly correct. It would just be the intersections as they come online. It wouldn't go ordinally from south to north based on the redistricting application that the city has received and brought forward to council. The determined access point would actually be that central one. So the initial analysis that would be undertaken for this development would be looking at what would the speed limit in the vicinity of that intersection be. And then as further the other 2 access points are added in the decades to come, then additional technical analysis would be undertaken to determine, does the speed limit need to change in the areas of those? But it would be that initial one basically is just that central one.
Okay, so of the 3, it's the middle one of the 3 is our initial intersection point. Okay, that does answer my question more, I think, quite effectively. I'll yield the floor, Mr. Stewart, to anybody else for a moment here. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further. Oh, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, I'm just, I'd like to go back to, the comments that Councillor Hendricks has made and maybe just pose a question back at him. To have considered we had the 50th Street functional study presented to us, and we held off on this decision to ask administration to have a look at that and present it, and they did that. But to have considered the 50th Street functional study just discussed, and to use its guidance in the ASP that's in front of us, what specific changes would you see or want to see occur in what is proposed? I think you've articulated your concern really well, and that is the flow and the speed. But if how would that be fixed? How would we deem the 50th Street functional study considered in this ASP, and just in your view?
Your Worship, thank you. My comments are clean, very clear. What I'm trying to get at is that we should hit a minimum, and that design should hit that minimum. This whole idea of 40 kilometers in that zone is a deal breaker for me. 50 is a deal breaker. 60 is a deal breaker. I mean, I could see 70 to 80 maybe, but we've already gone from 100 to 80, right? So, it's a race to the bottom. And to me, it's up to the developer, whoever that is, if he needs access onto that road and he's got to put sets of lights and he's got to do the things that were in the 50th Street trunk functional study process, great. But anything after that is at this point, it seems to be arbitrary. We're trying to appease this group. We're not looking at, I think, the vision that came out of the MGB order. I was in all those meetings. I put all that time in. I listened to all that effort. And it should mean something. it should really mean something, and it should resonate now, because now is the first guy in, first development in. And it's already, we're hearing, wow, we got to do studies, we got to do this. Then why drag us through all this process? Why drag us through the 50th Street function study process? It's time you can't get back, right? Time out of your life you'll never get back. And now I'm hearing, well, it's as solid as jello as far as whatever the studies might take us and where it might, take us as a result of safety and other issues. Come on. I mean, let's understand that there's design parameters we have to meet, and that's the end of it. And they have to come up with a way to get there. That's all.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what those tangibles are, like just to, what that would mean. And when I look at the board order, I see that there's in there, page 68 of 93 of that document under number 253, it says intersection spacing of 800 meters is suggested. So that would lead to, two access points in the ASP rather than the proposed 3. So, that's a tangible, if I was, what would you prefer to see? If that document was considered holistically and followed directly, just that document, that I'm trying to figure out what would change, right? And that's numerically, that's the one piece I could see would change. When it comes to what order the development is going to occur, Mr. Rate said that, the figure that Councillor Daniluk referred to, the 179 of 283, which is the overview of the land use concept, there's 3 access points, and it's the center one that is going to be considered first. That one does, I'm going to hazard a guess that that's 800 meters up. So with the development that's going to occur, the spacing would be there. I think the overarching comment and concern is that, as the ASP is built out, there will be other intersections and there will be other slowdown points. So a question for administration, what is Edmonton going to do, and what is Edmonton going to consider as they continue to go south? Because what we see is build a neighborhood, put a light, build a neighborhood, put a light, build a neighborhood, put a light. So, is that what we can expect to see from Edmonton? Because that's what urbanization looks like. And that's what they're putting our way. Can you comment on that, Admin, Mr. Rates? What will Edmonton do, and will they keep that same flow?
So through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, the city's planning direction for the 50th Street corridor, the highest level and strongest policy direction is provided within the city plan, which is their municipal development plan, and it identifies that the area of the 50th Street corridor south of 41st Avenue Southwest is not intended to develop for quite some time until the city reaches a population of 2 million people. So we can state that in that area, it is unlikely that the corridor's access points along the corridor would change drastically. The nature of that corridor, or the roadway design along the corridor, may change, but with no urbanization occurring until the city meets or goes past 2 million people, there would not be a demand for access points to be added. So that's that high level policy direction for 50th Street provided south of 41st Avenue, and then north of 41st Avenue, as development continues to occur over the coming decades, the direction that they'd likely align, or like that they would align with, would reflect that their standards, and then above that, the regional planning direction, which identifies that 250 to 400 meter intersection spacing for arterial roadways. So that would be what we can state is the city of Edmonton's likely approach going into the future. But I would also defer to either Mr. Wong or Mr. G if there's any further comments on this piece.
I think Stephen, Mr. Rates captured it very nicely with the City of Edmonton's long-term plan, right? Because that is the recently approved municipal development plan, which identified that area will not be urbanized until the population reaches 2 million people. But also the MDP is also the TMP. That is the intent of that plan development. And the plan is also identifying 50th Street, that portion of 50th Street from basically Ellerslie Road down, actually connecting to City of Beaumont as arterial. So it will be similar standards. And I want to make the point is to emphasize the collaborations with the City of Edmonton, even though, yes, at the end of the day, they may not necessarily develop that area in a near future. So probably we are ahead of them, but eventually we will have to work with them as to how the connections be made. So I think that is the key point. It won't be City of Beaumont single-handedly decided what the 50th Street corridor will look like. We have to consult and work with the City of Edmonton, and that is the spirit of intermunicipal planning framework as well. So,
yeah, but just for a quick, if we go recognizing that they don't have functional planning documents down there, we're recognizing the high level. But if we go off historical, we can pretty much expect to see coming towards us what they've currently done south of Ellerslie Road there.
Yep, I would assume so. It's a 4-lane cross section, yeah, from South Ellerslie Road at least to the last set of lights at this point of time. Yeah, I forgot the avenue there, but there is a little corner.
It's 20th or something, but don't
something like that. I guess it would be very similar to that.
Yeah, supplemental, Mayor.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess my point is, and in layman's terms, they're gonna, Edmonton is gonna build a development, then they're gonna put an access point in. They're gonna build a development, they're gonna put an access point in. They're gonna build an element, they're gonna put an access point in. And consequently, Beaumont is proposing to build a development and put an access point in, and there's gonna be 3 access points potentially. What I would say to the speed conversation is that how fast you can go on what road and who decides that speed is a tough thing sometimes, because when you look at it at a high level, you're going 110 on Highway 2. If you look at 510, you're going 60 and then you're going 70, and then you turn north into a pothole filled gravel road and you can go 80. And then you hit some pavement and then you can only go 60, but you were just going 80 on the pothole filled gravel road, kicking up dust and making it hard for the next person to see and the person who passes you to see. Then you leave that gravel road and find a wider piece of paved road and you're going 100. And though none of those problems or concerns are anything that we're able to control, because this is a approval of an ASP process. And Councillor Hendricks did ask the direct question of administration, can we say the speed is this? But we're not able to say that. So as far as an approval of the ASP goes in front of us, the studies that have been pointed to indicate 40 to 70 kilometers an hour. And as Councillor Hendricks said, let's hope for 70, right? To try and keep those speeds up. And, should there be a need to move down to anything, lower than 70, I would have a hard time with that. But I think that the ASP at its heart is a 10,000 person bump to Beaumont. And, I think it's important for Beaumont to be able to grow. We couldn't have grown without the annexation and all the efforts that have got us to this point. So, I'm kind of rambling a bit now, but, my point is that Edmonton's coming south. We're coming north, and the speed on roads isn't something that we can put a pin in here tonight and an ASP approval. So those are my points, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, we seem to be going in a bit of a circle, so let's see if we can speed this up a bit. We got Councillor Dunlop, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Monkoff-Swain, and then I'd like to call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. This is actually a new topic in the conversation, a brief point to be made, or a brief question, pardon me. Mr. Rates, we have discussed 50th Street in the functional study plan and also in the area structure plan for Larive here as being an arterial road. Many people have already said 50th Street is already too slow at 80, let alone rolling the speed down the way it is. Once you start having development, you've got to control the speed there. So is the next level after arterial an actual highway? So you go from arterial to highway. I saw somewhere a document where I mentioned a highway and then I can't find it now. I'm trying to ask the question, but 50th Street right now is at 80 because it's an arterial road. It can't be any faster than 80 based on its designation. Is that correct? Oh, that's not me doing that, is it? No.
No, that's Mr. Rate sharing a screen.
Yes, thank you. You understand my question, Mr. Rates?
I'm muted, sorry. Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Daniluk. I thought I would be so smooth and start sharing my screen and then start speaking, but I was sharing my screen, but I was on mute. So here I am, prepared to answer your question now. The documents that you were likely looking at that classified the roadway would either be the Transportation Master Plan, which gets its direction from the Municipal Development Plan. And you're correct in that, you know, the kind of the rungs or the levels of roadway classification we have would be highway, which would really only be 625 and 814. In the city's jurisdiction, and then arterial being the highest classification, then collector, then local. And so it is not going to be amplified to a highway. It would be, and it wouldn't be demoted to a collector within any of these scenarios for growth. It would stay as an arterial and be built to the policy direction and analysis that's provided through the development process.
Thank you. One last clarifying question then. This area structure plan aside, let's say it wasn't there at all, we're just discussing 50th Street as an arterial road. What is the speed range given for an arterial road the way it is? Is it normally 60 to 80 despite any kind of development? I'm just trying to get my head around, you know, it's an arterial road, so it's 80 right now, but the range normally is, for example, 60 to 80. Then you start bringing in commercialization, that does change the range, but what is the range for an arterial road now? Are you aware of that by any chance from Alberta transportation guidelines or anything else that matter?
So through your worship to Councillor Daniluk, I don't have an immediate response to that question. I would just reassert that the 40 to 70 reflects an arterial in various land use contexts that for the most part would be urbanized. Like that is the intent of that 40 to 70 is to capture an arterial in an urbanized setting that requires slower speeds as well as an urbanized setting that requires faster speeds or that, you know, would allow for faster speeds. But I would defer to Mr. Wong or Mr. G if there's any further information we would have on that.
Actually, that's sufficient for my purpose. Thank you very much. I'm fine with that answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And let's not forget, ultimately the speed limits will be defined by traffic engineers that have the experience and knowledge to set them. Councillor, where was I? Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Mungoff-Swain.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for all the thought and responses that are going into this conversation. It's important, and change is hard, and this feels like a really big change from what Beaumont was to what Beaumont is going to become and look like in the future. And I really feel like I'm in between a rock and a hard place. I really do want to see Beaumont develop and grow. We need residents. We need this area to develop, but we also do want to have quick access. Although it's foolish to think that Edmonton isn't going to come right to our border and we're not going to have very quick access for very long. Well, quick access because Edmonton is real close. It's right there on our border. So yeah, we're in Edmonton right away. So I can't see a way forward. I really am stuck. I want to approve this area structure plan, but I'm feeling like we have no choice. We have to take it as it is. And I don't like council being put in that position. I think we're hearing some real questions about some things that we're not able to solidify in this plan. And I guess this is the question to the administration. Am I right in that if we were to say, if the votes went that this was not approved, what would be the impact on this development? Would it just die? Or is there a chance that they would come back and say, here, we've got a solution to this problem?
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, if the area structure plan were to be voted down, there would be a 6-month period where the applicant would not be able to bring this back forward to council basically. And as a result of the area structure plan not moving forward, the NSP and the redistricting would of course not move forward either. But the additional note I'll add in here regarding how the policy framework develops a plan like this, the impacts to the corridor align with everything that has been set out and agreed to within the statutory planning documents, within the regional planning documents, within the sub-regional planning documents. So administration presents a recommendation such as this because this is what has been agreed to already. And understanding that development will occur over time and that changes will occur over time as well. We will be in a place where the 50th Street corridor will look different, but the 50th Street corridor changing is due to the annexation process and the vision for urbanization in this area and the transportation master plan providing guidance for safe and efficient connections. So that would be the one additional comment administration would add at this point, is that, you know, we bring forward a recommendation such as this because it does align with what we have tried to move forward with and does align with the vision that the community has.
Can I just ask one follow-up? Sorry. And so if the area structure plan were to not pass, if the area structure plan were to pass, could at the neighborhood structure plan, some of these details about where the access points would be, or is it too late? You have to do it at this stage.
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, the access points are set at the area structure plan in a high level way that, you know, there will be an access point at this location, and then the neighborhood structure plan would look at a smaller area within it. So with the area structure plan being set and approved, the neighborhood structure plan would have to follow that, and subsequently the redistricting as well.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councilor Goswing.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And maybe I'll try and bring this up to a higher level planning conversation. We annexed the land north of 510 in order for Beaumont to grow, to attract business and to attract more residents. I think we could all agree on that. So we did that. Then we've got a developer who's come to the city saying that they want to develop in that land. Their plans meet all the statutory requirements that we've put in. The developer has identified that they want to move forward with this. We are, as a council, we've said that we want to grow Beaumont, we want to attract business. The plans that are put in place through this ASP and NSP allow a great opportunity to attract business. So at a very high level conversation, this lines up with everything that we're trying to do. The question I have for administration is, do we have any sense of when this developer is looking to move forward with this? Sometimes we have ASPs, NSPs in front of us where action doesn't happen for a while. I'm just curious if administration has an idea of when this development may want to occur.
So through your worship to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, the development process is led by private industry, and so we can't ascertain exactly when that would occur. And the best indication that administration can give at this point is that the applicant has brought forward the area structure plan, the neighborhood structure plan, as well as the redistricting, and it has also moved forward with a potential subdivision at this point as well. So the applicant has shown that their intent is to begin development within the redistricting portion in the short term, but as is stated within the area structure plan, the overall development of these lands will take several years, decades likely, and so the access points being added on would be added on in a similar time frame based on the pace of that growth.
What I heard from your response there is that the developer is looking to get moving on this, which is why they submitted this application. So at a very high level, we've got an ASP in front of us that meets all the requirements that we've put out in our statutory documents. We're hoping to attract new growth within our city. This plan meets all of that. So I'm supportive of it, and I think we should vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Therefore, debate is now closed, and we'll call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Daniluk, Councillor Hendricks, waiting for you to vote.
Your worship, we've been advised that we can no longer debate this matter. Is that what you're stating?
Yes, I did
I
say
had my
that.
hand up. I had my hand up, your worship.
Well, you can pick this back up again at third reading. And that carries. Councillor Daniluk, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Sorry, John, I hit yes twice, sorry.
And that carries 7-1. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading?
6-1, right?
7-1 would imply 8 of us had voted.
Sorry, 6-1. Councillor
can
Hendricks opposed. All those, everybody else in favor.
I can move
Is there
third.
a member
third
of council willing to move third reading of bylaw 994-21, Lareve Area Structure Plan, third reading? Councillor Stout.
So moved, your worship.
Debate motion. Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you for the opportunity, your worship. I just want to make one more final comment, and that's around your comments regarding traffic studies and design. Of course, that was done. That's how this road got developed. It was developed around a 25,000 vehicle per day continuum. And on that basis, the road needed a certain pattern of speed and design. And that's what's been done. If you want to take it down to 40 kilometers an hour, we do it at the peril of making a lot of people upset. You try to drag 25,000 vehicles a day through there at that quarter at that speed, you're going to look like the situation that Twilliger Drive currently has, right? And then, because once the infrastructure is in place for this new subdivision, there's no turning back. You're stuck. And if I can, Colonial Estates, what was wrong with their approach to Highway 814, right? That's how they went about it. And that at that time, that was Highway 814. And their entrance was, was without issue. So, and the way they consolidated their commercial space. So I get that. To suggest that because everything meets all these statutory documents and find their way to a conclusion, which is only yes, is wrong. Because the difference in this entire discussion is our asset and what happens to our asset. It's got nothing to do with the asset that they're suggesting. But what I'm being told is that as a result of all the yeses, that all these area structure plans and all the other statutory declarations follow, that now we have an asset that's being impacted. Okay? And I don't think that's correct. So I'm saying this development can meet all the requirements without impacting our asset. And that's where I would be. That's where I'd be fighting for our taxpayers, our people in Beaumont, that this asset should not be turned over in essence by design to a developer. It should be made to complement our asset. And that's what is not happening. So I'm absolutely opposed to this for those reasons alone.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Appreciate your comments. Seeing no further hands, call the question. All in favor of third reading?
Oh, sorry. Trying to hit no.
Councillor Stout. Thank you. Ooh, guys, keep it up till I call it. Councillor Daniluk, Councillor Van Newkirk. All right, and third reading passes 5-2. Councillor Barnhart and Councillor Hendricks in opposition. All right, which brings us to 7:34. Quick 10-minute break because we've been now sitting for an hour and a half.
Just a quick question on the
sure.
Just a quick question on the votes there. Like I'm only pressing the button once. I don't know why votes are clearing there. So I both times I press the button right at the beginning and then the votes are clearing. So just so you know that that's, I don't know what's happening there. So
same thing here. Same thing.
Maybe Zoom's doing something silly. Just noted, and then we'll just have to fight with it, I guess. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Just so you're clear, same thing happening to Steve is for me too. Thank you. Pleased to reconvene the meeting, a regular council meeting of Tuesday, April 27th.
We're on bylaw 9B, LaRive Neighborhood Structure Plan, second and third reading. Mr. Rates, there you are.
So good evening, everyone. This is just a brief verbal presentation. I am here to present second and third reading of bylaw 996-21 for consideration of second and third reading. A review period for the neighborhood structure plan was completed and followed a similar circulation process, and administration is of the opinion that the applicant has ensured consistency with the city's overall policy framework, including the proposed area structure plan, and addressed any concerns raised. So additionally, a public hearing was held in accordance with the legislation on April 13th, and administration recommends that council give second and third reading to this neighborhood structure plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rates. Is there a member of council willing to remove second reading of bylaw 996-21, LaRive Southwest Neighborhood Structure Plan? Councilor Van Newkirk.
So moved, and I would start with the debate.
Please.
Yeah, Mr. Rates, if I could direct you to page 224 of 283 in the package. It's also page 34 in the NSP.
Just need that first number again. Oh, it's taking a second to load, so I'm just going to open.
Yeah, no problem. It's the active transport network, the figure 12. That's the one I'm looking at. I'm going at the path on the west versus the east. So just so you know where I'm going here.
Yes, yeah, I'm familiar with the document and it's coming up, so you can.
Okay, cool. So I've raised this concern each time this document is in front of us, and one of the answers that I heard before is that council approved previous documents that had this path on the west side, therefore that's how it ends up here. So fair, I understand that. I still do think it's a miss. The question I have is, what adjustments would be needed to what plan in order to indicate this trail be on the east side rather than the west, to match what is coming south from Edmonton? So that's the question. And why the question is because it is infinitely cheaper now for taxpayers to adjust a line on a plan than it is going to be to engineer a safe solution to cross this 25,000 axle count per day road. So if Edmonton continues to come down the east and we do in fact go up the west, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars are we going to spend on upgraded crossing structures, a bridge over, a tunnel under, to make it safe for people? So right now, if we adjust a line, it's adjusting a line on a plan. Later, it is a lot of dollars to change that. And so my question again, what adjustments need to be made to what plan in order to indicate the trail be on the east side instead of the west? Yeah, thank you. You can see the blue line there.
So through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, the plans that would need to be amended prior to then reviewing this and updating it would be the municipal development plan and the transportation master plan. But I would add here that it's very clearly defined that some kind of regional connection is expected in our transportation master plan and municipal development plan, as well as in the planning direction at the sub-regional and the regional planning direction. And with the current cross section that's provided in southern Edmonton along 50th Street, the longer term, so that connection is only going to be built up to a certain point at this moment as we see it right now, and it's on a certain side of the road. But with collaborating with the city, there may be the opportunity to provide an additional active transportation route on the west side to ensure a cohesive connection all along 50th Street. And I would note that within the city plan and the high-level active transportation network that's defined in that, it is not designated to be on the east or west side of 50th Street, that active transportation connection from Edmonton to Beaumont. It's simply overlaid. So yeah, the first part being we would need to amend the MDP and the TMP. And the second part being that the city of Edmonton is a partner that we can collaborate with going forward to ensure that, you know, we don't end up to a point where at an intersection it's like that, and instead that decision can be made by the city of Edmonton earlier to align with what we've clearly indicated in all of our high-level planning documents would be on the west side of 50th Street.
Yeah, and then should a motion be put forward in the future to adjust the MDP and the TMP, what is the process for that? Do those adjustments need to go back to the regional board, get approved, and then come back to council?
So I'll defer this to Mr. Wong if he can speak to that, if he is still here.
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, good.
To councillors Newkirk through the mayor, to answer that question, whether the MDP, if we just adjust the alignment of the trail on the MDP, whether it needs to go to EMRB for approval, we have to circulate it to them. But I believe that that doesn't require the REF process, because that doesn't really affect the spirit of the plan. And also, I would emphasize that the plan, it has the flexibility of indicating the trail, whether it is on the right side or the left side of the road. It just indicating that there will be an active transportation trail network going north along 50th Street. It doesn't really specify on which side of the road it will be landing on. And at the end of the day, we need, like Mr. Reyes is talking, we have to work with the city of Edmonton, because in their city plan, they also indicating there is a trail connection. So we have to work with them. So whether we single-handedly saying that this will be on the east side, and at the end of the day, they refute this will be on the west side. So at the end of the day, it will be a collaborative efforts, but for sure, we will be having a head start. The network will not be there tomorrow. We still have the time to work with the city of Edmonton, because the road will not change tomorrow when the plan is approved. So it will be like an evolving process. So when we work on the cross section of the road, when we do road improvements, and even like that trail will not be put from 510 all the way to the city limits at one shot. It will be probably an incremental process.
Yeah, supplemental, Mayor?
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess my concern remains, and what the concern is that if you show the figure with the road, with the trail on the west side enough, then it gets referred back to as the way it's going to be. I think, you know, some of the stuff that Councillor Hendricks has brought up, you know, the things that he's been involved with in the past, and then them not coming to, you know, or them coming to fruition a certain way, and then it's referred back to for a picture. So, you know, if I dust off my crystal ball and look into the future, and maybe we're having this discussion in 5 years, then, you know, administration refers back to this document, shows me a picture with the line on the west side of the road and says, see, it was in front of you and you voted for it. So, you know, so I'm not okay with that. You know, I think that we need to be representative on a plan of what we're doing. And, you know, that's where I'm at. So I guess a question for administration. What is the process on this NSP to have that blue line put onto the east side of the diagram here on Figure 12? What would that process look like, and what does that involve from the proponent standpoint and from the approval standpoint? If you could share that, what that process would look like to move that line from west to east, that blue line on a figure.
So through your worship to Councillor Munkoff, Van Newkirk, it would require looking back to and possibly amending the municipal development plan, the transportation master plan, and the area structure plan, which we have just passed, which indicates that it would be on that side of the roadway. So there would be 3 levels of documents that we would be working through. And ultimately there will in any scenario, if things are amended or if things are not amended, there will still be the relationship with the city of Edmonton to collaboratively build that connection to ensure that it is something that is cohesive and efficiently provided for as development continues to occur along the corridor.
Okay, final question, Mayor.
Final question, yeah.
Yeah, when is the appropriate time to bring forward a motion to amend all those documents to move that line from west to east? You know, I don't want to hold up the NSP approval tonight should it proceed, but it's definitely not something I'm going to let die here. So when is the right time to bring forward that motion to amend all those documents and get this updated?
You'd have to file a notice when I call for notices of motion. Further in the meeting is when you would bring that up.
Okay, thanks. That's all for now.
Councillor Mungoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, CAO stuck his hand up.
Just back to that, the discussion on the trail. If you want to change that line from west to east, it doesn't change anything, because we're still going to build that connection in collaboration with our regional partners in the city of Edmonton. So if you want to adjust that map so that the line's on the east side, really it's going to be determined by the conversations anyway. It may very well end up on the west side anyway. So just throwing that out there, rather than changing a whole bunch of planning documents. It's, as Stephen said, it's going to be a matter of collaborating as we make those connections.
Okay, Councillor Mungoff-Swain.
Yeah, I think you just answered exactly Steve's point. Like, if it's that simple, then let's do it. How do we do that? I think was his question. And now what we heard was that we've got to go back through and make a notice of motion to adjust, and it seems like a very extensive process. But what you just said, Mr. Schwartz, was if you just want to move it to the other side of the road, we can do that. So I think if we can do it, then let's do it.
CAO.
No, that's not what I said, and I miscommunicated that. My point is, if you make the notice of motion and change all of those documents and move that line to the other side, it's still going to come down to the collaboration we do with our regional partners in the city of Edmonton on where that trail actually goes. But if Stephen's correct, if we want to move it on that drawing, we're going to amend all three of those documents. My point I was trying to make is it wouldn't serve any purpose or little purpose.
I appreciate it.
Which is a debate we can get into should Councillor Van Newkirk file his motion, and then we can debate doing that when we hit there. Let's concentrate on the NSP.
For sure. No, and thanks for clarifying that, CAO, that it was, if we went through the notice of motion process, that would be easy to do, but wouldn't potentially have any material impact. But the question I had, hopefully this is straightforward, is who's accountable to put in that trail system? Is it the city or is it the developer?
So through your worship to Councillor Mungoff-Swain, actually I'll defer this one just to make sure that it's clearly stated.
Yeah, and to be clear, when I said trail, I didn't mean trail. I think you know what I meant. Who's accountable to put in that blue line?
Mr. Wong, Ms. Dargy.
I can give it a, nope, go ahead, Joanne.
Your worship, through to Councillor Mungoff-Swain. So when you ask who's responsible to move the blue line, or are you talking about actually constructing the trail?
Who actually builds the trail?
Okay. Yeah, and the reason for I'll let you answer that first.
Sure. So the city would work with the developer at the time of subdivision to take appropriate land for the trail. And then depending on if the trail in this instance is along an arterial road, the city will be building that trail.
Okay, thank you. My question and concern was, if we've got a developer here who's put forward this plan, and part of the lands that they're proposing to develop is on the east side of this road, and so if we still have a nice blue line on the west side of the road, then they're not, that little section of trail is not going to get built. But if we're able to get Councillor Van Newkirk's, if we move it over, then I just want to make sure that we're not letting the developer off the hook, essentially, if they're accountable to execute that piece. But what I'm hearing you say is that along 50th Street heading north, Beaumont would be the ones who would be accountable to install that system. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so at this stage, it would be on, whether it's on the east or west side in this plan, it doesn't really impact the developer and the development. That's something that we need to decide as a municipality. Okay, thank you. I got no further questions on that.
Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Sorry, just muting myself. Yeah, just I want to add my my thoughts in on that trail as well. Yeah, I think it very much should be on the east side of the road, and if we can change it on this NSP diagram onto the east side, then I'm happy with that for all the reasons that we already discussed, and that I recognise that it may get changed back again in later negotiation with Edmonton. But my reason for supporting that is we're putting 10,000 new people in there. We're building a active transportation network within the new neighborhood, but for anybody to get onto the trail to connect them up to presumably as far as Ellerslie and then onto Edmonton, they're going to be crossing a 4 or will it be 6-lane highway. Speed limits are an issue apparently, as we've just been discussing. It just seems crazy to me to do that to everybody. Why don't we just put the trail on the east side of the road, and therefore why don't we indicate our intention now at this stage of planning to do that, and if it has to change later, then we hear those arguments then.
I would encourage council not to hold up the NSP tonight, because we do have to do the MDP, the TMP, the ASP, and then come back, and I'd rather see development go ahead while all that's being done. Should Councillor Van Newkirk put his notice of motion out, should council vote for it. So
understood, but I'm likely to be voting for it, I guess.
Councillor Hendricks.
Perhaps could somebody expand then on the whole trail theory?
In terms of?
Where it's going, how it connects?
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, currently there is a multi-use trail on the east side of 50th Street within Edmonton, but in reviewing that very high level planning direction that's provided in the city plan, the city plan directs that there would be an active transportation connected to Beaumont, just overlaid on top of 50th Street. So it's not determined on if it's on the east or the west side. Right now, what we see is on the west side, but in reviewing the area structure plan and the neighborhood structure plan for development that's currently undergoing right now, what is visible along 50th Street is on the intention for a shared use path or a multi-use trail on the west side of the street. It's not built at this time, and may be built, or there's the intention to build it in the future based on what's provided in the plans, and that just might be dependent on eventual upgrade of that roadway or other considerations. But we currently see something that's on the west side of the street. The high level plan says that something should go along this street, and the lower level land use statutory plans on the west side of the street indicate that some kind of trail will go there. So hopefully that provides some clarification. I know we've discussed it a few different ways, but we do currently see something on the east side of the street, but the statutory plans for the west side of 50th Street do indicate that there is some kind of shared use path that would follow. It's just not there. And when that regional connection is fulfilled, it would be fulfilled in a way that is efficiently provided and provides a cohesive, safe connection. So that might be something that's entirely on the west side of the street.
Okay, so you're in Larive, you get on your bike, you get on the pathway, you're going north. Where do you go? You go up, you're heading north up this path on that side of the road. Where do you go?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, you go along 50th Street. According to Beaumont's planning direction provided hitherto, you are going along the west side of the street, and you follow 50th Street until you reach Edmonton, moving on to Edmonton's active transportation infrastructure that they've connected with ours. And according to the statutory land use planning documents for the west side of 50th Street that include the Southeast Area Structure Plan and the Walker Neighborhood Structure Plan, there is a shared use path envisioned for that west side of the street. So that is what we have presented to us to this point. What is visible right now is something on the west side of the street. So I understand that confusion coming up, but hopefully that provides some clarification.
Okay, I'm on my bike, I'm riding north. How do I get to Edmonton? Like, are there parallel paths all the way up, or?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, you follow the path that is highlighted in the high level planning documents. Sorry, I just received an email, but yeah, you follow the path, you cross 50th Street and you follow the path that's highlighted within the high level planning documents. And the email that I just received was clarification on the Edmonton so clarification on the Edmonton standards for arterial roadways, and their standards are for both sides of the road. So there is a planned connection. It's just we don't see it on one side of the street right now.
Okay, so I'm coming out of Beaumont. I've left 510. I go past the Reeve. I still got to cross somewhere, right?
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, there would be several crossing points provided dependent on where the starting point and the end point of your destination is. And those crossing points have been identified within the area structure plan as active transportation crossings that have a further policy direction to instill that that's a safe crossing, that's an effective crossing for multiple users.
Right. So now you're taking the population base that's sitting in Edmonton, or sorry, in Beaumont on a bike as they come north. They got to go past the Reeve and then they still got to cross. Or should we have the pathway in place on the other side so that you didn't have to cross?
Okay, I see where you're going with this. I'm going to ask a rather simple question. This is not really a road design, it's a concept drawing. Really, can we amend this motion to move that line to the east side of the road? And then this whole conversation dies.
So
because it's still got to be done collaboratively, it's still got to be done. The more I think about this, the more I'm thinking it's not all that. Mr. Wong, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, to your worship, yes, the NSP, it is still the concept plan, and there is still stages for the developments to occur and the improvements to the road to occur. So if the council perceive this line on the left side of that arterial road arrow should be on the right side, then probably I would suggest, like the mayor yourself is saying, move that line to the right side, and that requires a motion from council to amend basically the document, particularly figure 12. Is that figure 12? Yeah.
Figure 12, page 224.
Yep. So yeah, and I think council can just make a motion to amend the document, right? The NSP document.
So can we just move from a practical standpoint, can we amend the move of second reading, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, to include moving the line from the west side to the east side of the road on figure 12?
I would believe so, yeah.
Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, are you willing to make that friendly amendment?
That isn't the answer that I heard from administration before at all. What I heard is that I have a notice of motion coming up at the end of the meeting to amend the MDP, the TMP, the LaRave ASP, the LaRave NSP to reflect the northern regional connection of the active transport facility network on the east side of 50th Street rather than the west as currently depicted. That's what I heard from administration before, is there's a notice of motion coming at the end of this meeting. So I'd like to have some clarification from administration on that, please.
Yeah, to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk through the mayor, in order to basically to do the NDP, MDP, and the TMP first, then we come back to the NSP. We have to basically suspend the NSP for now until the MDP and the TMP is amended. So the quick way, because they don't align with the MDP now. So, and that is the thing. If we are going to amend the MDP on the map depiction of the active active transportation going north on the west side, on the east side of the 50th Street. Yes, we will do that notice of motions for administration to undertake that amendments to those two plans. But on this NSP, I'm concentrating on the NSP, so council can make that friendly amendments to move this line first. But then later on, we will deal with the notice of motions to amend the MTP and the TMP. So we don't have to hold this NSP up, so that we can deal with this tonight, and then we can go back to the MTP and the TMP.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm still
So
not.
I'm confused now too.
I'm still not clear at all.
Yeah, let's. I think we vote on the motion in front, and then Councillor Van Newkirk is going to put forward the notice of motion, and we'll debate that in 2 weeks. We'll get better advice in 2 weeks once the clerk has had a chance to look at it. I just wanted to reinforce your point, Mayor, that you know, while an important discussion, the bigger picture here is a large development, a very exciting development for Beaumont, and I don't think anyone wants to hold that up over which side of a planning document that this comes up, and nothing that I've heard from anyone is saying that. So I'd encourage people to vote for this to get this approved, and then if Councillor Van Newkirk is going to make that motion later, then we can debate, what the impact would be of moving the conceptual line. So I just wanted to reinforce that, while I'm concerned about which side the road is on, I don't think that we should be holding up, and I'll definitely be supporting this, and I'm very excited for this development.
Okay, Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is getting more convoluted than maybe it needs to be, but it's important. And I agree with Councillor Monkoff-Swain. It's exciting. I want to see it happen. But the question I want to ask the administration right now, Mr. Wong, if we approve this neighborhood structure plan as is, doesn't that give the developer the wrong message when we're going to turn around then and change it? Like in terms of the land they would have to use for the trail, we'd be saying, now we want it from this parcel on the east side, not on the west side. So that affects the developer, does it not?
No, not really, because like as Ms. Taji said earlier, the actual improvement and construction of the road will be undertaken by the city. So the developer would be during the subdivision and the servicing agreement would handle the intersections. So I believe we can still do that. It won't interfere with the developer's timing. Ms. Dodges may be able to give a little bit more details on this.
And not just the timing, if I may, Ms. Darcy, before you answer, it's the land. Because wouldn't we have to take land to put the trail on?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Barnhart. So depending on the design of the trail and the width of the existing roadway would determine how much land we might need to take from the developer, or if there's any just backsloping required, it might be very minimal. There is enough room along 50th Street to include a trail from what from the design that we have right now. So any additional land would be very minimal. It would be taken and considered at the subdivision stage. So if there's a subdivision that's adjacent to that, that's when we would look at that road dedication there.
Just a supplemental comment, Mayor and Council. I really feel like Council is being given a plan, and every time we raise an objection, we're kind of told, no, we can go ahead with it. Feels like, it's, approve it regardless of what you like. And it's really annoying. It really is. I just have to say that. And I'm not sure what the solution is to this, but I can't remember one being this convoluted and hard to get our points across. And it could be because all of it is coming 1, 2, 3. Like maybe if we had sent it back and said, fix these things and then bring it back, we might have been in a better place, but this doesn't feel right. It's my opinion.
Councillor Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. And just another process question around the NSP. So if we approve the NSP as such, and then if I did decide to bring a notice of motion to amend all of the documents, including the NSP, forward. Is that possible, or would I be told that you've approved it, now it can't be edited?
Oh no, it cannot, like, I'm gonna weigh in on that. Yeah, same way we approved, we can amend the NDP, you can amend the NSP too, that's the will of council. So, but apparently we need to start at the top and work our way back to it, which can be done at any time. Like, how often have we seen NSPs that didn't work out right and come back as the market and stuff shifted over time? So, and NSPs and plans like this get adjusted all the time, and Mr. RG or Mr. Race can correct me if I'm wrong there.
Your worship, yes, that's correct. NSPs do get amended, ASPs get amended. To clarify, the option that Mr. Wong had provided was, if council wants to move the blue line on this diagram today, you can amend the motion to approve the ASP with that the NSP with that amendment. In order for all of the planning documents then to be in alignment as per the Municipal Government Act, you could then go and do that notice of motion, Councillor Van Newkirk, to amend the Municipal Development Plan, the Transportation Master Plan, and the Area Structure Plan. So then all 4 plans would be in alignment.
Okay, well, Mayor, I think that process-wise, then I would make that amendment to the motion to have the figure 12 have the active transportation facility network be indicated on the east side of 50th Street in the NSP.
Okay, I'm just thinking about that though, because now we've put a gun to our heads if we do that. What happens if you make the notice of motion and then council votes it down because we don't want to spend the time, effort, or the money? So I think we start at the top and work our way back.
Then I think we
better way to go.
Administration that it doesn't matter, and that there is collaboration required and everything we've heard along the way, and that would tell me that it does matter, because historically speaking, what side of the road lines are put on, that's where things are built on, and that's what will be pointed back to is all of these planning documents by administration of the day. So that's the genesis of my concern and conversation here, right?
No, and I agree with you, but just from a process point of view, if you put your notice of motion forward and council does not vote to amend those top 3 documents, and we've amended this one, then we have to come back and amend this one to make it all line up. So I think it's a chicken and an egg thing, and if we want to do it, I think we start at the top and work down. So it's up to you if you still want to make that friendly amendment, but.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking it through because, maybe I'll pause. I see Councillor Hendrick put his hand up. I'll pause for a second.
Councillor Hendricks, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Why couldn't we just have that discussion on its own and vote on its own? I mean, it's about a transportation network that's already identified in the board order. I mean, the pedestrian facilities under section 278 of the act of the order clearly states that we got to get the alignment sorted out. We could say that's got really nothing to do with this. Why wouldn't we just have a debate and vote on this? We want to move it to the other side, period. It's got nothing to do with the rest. It shouldn't tie together.
So through your worship to, I guess, council as a whole, I think one thing to indicate here is that there is a corridor identified on the west side of the street, but that doesn't prevent us from investigating and potentially adding within the right-of-way a corridor along the east side of the street as well, which would ultimately reflect what is the regional connection that is planned for by the city of Edmonton, where they have facilities on both the east and the west side of the streets planned for within their high-level statutory plans, and also directed for within the standards for arterial roadways built within the city of Edmonton. So ultimately, what we will see eventually roll out of the city will be paths on both sides of the street. And although the city has identified just a path on the west side of the street, that does not mean that we can look into the future as a next step as adding one on the east side of the street as well. That can be another level of analysis and would not require us to go back up, amend something to remove it and place it somewhere else, but instead just amend it to add in an additional detail.
So yeah, with Councilor Hendrick's comments and Mr. Rates' comments and Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's comments, I think we'll just keep it at second reading. And then we will, through the notice of motion process, determine how we're gonna deal with that line. I think that's probably the easiest. Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, then I'm calling the question.
Yeah, and just to clarify the timing of that notice of motion, if I chose to put a notice of motion in, you know, is there any reason that notice of motion has to come in tonight, or could I propose a notice of motion at, you know, the next council meeting? I think the timing, there isn't a pressure for that timing right now, is there?
No, you can propose a notice of motion at any regular council meeting on
Yes.
any topic you choose.
The NSP discussion vote on the holistic plan, which I support, you know, can move forward. And if I chose to put a notice of motion forward, it need not happen tonight. It could happen at the next council meeting. So.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Call the question. All in favor? Looking for Councilor Van Nieuwkerk. He had his hand up, not his yes vote. And so just confirming, I have 6 votes in favor, 1 vote against, which is Councilor Hendricks. If that's not accurate, say your piece now. Okay, second reading passes 6-1. Councilor Hendricks opposed. Is member council willing to move third reading? Councilor Stout.
I'm willing to move third reading, Your Worship, but I'd like to see that blue line put on the right-hand side of the road. That's an amendment.
Notice of motion, Councilor. Notice of motion.
Well, can I not move it as part of third reading?
I guess you could, but then you risk it getting voted down for all of the reasons that we just discussed. It's consensus. The consensus I got from listening to council was that needs to be a separate discussion outside of this.
Okay, I'll move third reading and it's unamended. On that understanding, that we are going to change this later. I will move third reading in its unamended form.
Thank you. Third reading. Councilor Hendricks.
Your Worship, just to be clear, there is no guarantee that will be changed. Appreciate the Councilor Stout's comments, but there is no guarantee.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Call the question. All in favor? That passes 5-2. Councilors Barnhart and Hendricks opposed. If that's not correct, say so now. Thank you. That passes 5-2. Councilors Hendricks and Barnhart opposed. Brings us to bylaw 1000-21 property. Nope, sorry. 1001-21 land use bylaw amendment La Rev, Southwest Neighborhood Redistricting, second and third.
So good evening, council. I am here to present second and third reading of bylaw 1001-21. Administration's view is that this amendment to the land use bylaw is consistent with the city's overall policy framework. This application received a similar circulation process and underwent a public hearing in accordance with the legislation on April 13th. And administration recommends that council give second and third reading to this redistricting application.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading of bylaw 1001-21? Land use bylaw amendment La Rev, Southwest Neighborhood Redistricting. Seeing none, I'll move it. Okay, so Councilor Mark Swain put his hand up.
Yeah, I'll move that just to help you out there.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries 6-1. Councilor Hendricks opposed. If that's not correct, let me know now. Seeing no objections, that carries 6-1. Councilor Hendricks opposed. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councilor Stout.
I'll move third reading of that, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. If I can get the votes cleared. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And once again, that carries 6-1. Councillor Hendricks opposed. If that's not correct, let me know now. Okay, that carries 6-1. Councillor Hendricks opposed. Brings us to bylaw 1000-21 property tax and supplementary property tax. Mr. DeBlanco, welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening again to the mayor and council. Before you is a report requesting first, second, and third readings on the property and supplementary property tax bylaw. The attached bylaw required annually by the MGA establishes municipal tax rates for the property and supplementary property tax levies, the library and allowances, as well as requisition tax rates for the Alberta School Foundation Fund, St. Thomas Aquinas School Division, Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, and the designated industrial property tax requisition. This report comes following the amended budget approved on April 20th and sets the property tax rates for each of the assessment classes necessary to generate the municipal property tax levy approved in the 2021 operating budget. At the December 8th, 2020 council meeting, council approved a 2021 budget and 5-year capital and financial plans, which included a 0% property tax levy increase, subject to adjustments based on finalized 2020 property assessments. At the April 20th special council meeting, administration presented amendments to the approved budget. This bylaw has been prepared based on these amendments. The municipal tax rates presented in the attached bylaw will achieve property tax revenue in the amount of $22,011,626 plus revenue for the provincial education requisition, Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, and the designated industrial property tax. Although the blended tax levy has not increased, the impact, or has increased, although the blended tax levy has not increased, the impact of the 0% increase between residential and non-residential properties will vary. The variation will depend on a few things, including assessment changes. While these assessment changes do not affect the overall budget, they can cause tax shifting between properties and property types. Finally, the approval of this bylaw will allow the city to levy the 2021 municipal property tax totaling $22,011,600 with revenue attributable to real property growth in the amount of $475,100, and also includes an estimate for annex properties in the amount of $60,800, $77,900 for administrative recoveries, and an estimate of $122,900 for supplemental taxes. The bylaw will also allow the city to collect $795,700 for the library as approved in the 2021 budget. I can take any questions council may have at this time. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading? And then we'll start on to questions and debate, or questions on first reading and then move on to second and debate. Councillor Danlick.
So move, Your Worship. First reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the bylaw? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Just a real quick one. I can't recall the formula or percentage that is used to calculate the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation allocation. Can you remind me how we get to that number, please? Thank you.
Sure. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk, the municipalities involved with that are the equalized assessment, which is compiled by the province, is utilized, I believe, as a percentage basis. And then whatever the Housing Foundation's requirement is to operate, it's allocated pro rata based on equalized assessment.
Okay, so it equalized assessment, as in, does it matter on per capita? Is that a basis for the percentage, or is it a percent of what in the region? What I guess what I'm trying to think about is what changes in Beaumont to make that go up in the future. That's what my question was. I was thinking about.
Through to Councillor Van Newkirk, I believe it's solely based on assessment, but once again, I would need to double check that just to be
Okay.
certain.
Yeah, and it's not make or break at all for me. I just, for my information, I was wondering what needed to change in Beaumont for that to go up. That's what all I was wondering. So,
Mr. Dollar?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of, provide a little bit more additional information than what Mr. DeBlanco provided. Building on that, as Mr. DeBlanco said, it is based on equalized assessment. So in terms of what would cause an increase for the city of Beaumont in the future, it would be if our portion of equalized assessment grew bigger than our other municipalities that are part of the Housing Foundation. Obviously, the other factor that's going to increase what we provide to the Housing Foundation is what their ask is. So if their budget continually grows, they're going to require more from ourselves to provide that. So it's kind of a two-prong piece to what would see an increase in future years on that.
okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further hands, call a question on first reading. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading? Councillor Stout.
I'll move second reading, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, I'd like to make a motion, amendment motion to the second reading. It was circulated to council earlier today. Legislative Service, can you put it up on the chat line, please? And I'll read it out. That council approve a 5% tax cancellation for the 2021 tax year for bare land condo units in the city of Beaumont under section 347-1 Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, C M-26.
Appreciate that. Can you give us your reasoning as to why we should do that?
Yes, thank you. I will briefly just give council a background how we got to the motion this evening. As you may recall, earlier this year, we had a presentation from the Chateau Beaumont owners group regarding their understanding of their paying taxes, not getting full service from the city of Beaumont. At that time, council had requested administration to bring forth a report on that topic, which was done back in March last month. That report did not, for example, give the actual dollar figure that may be affected by that potential change in taxation for bare land condo units only. I was led to believe initially from administration that there are only 2 bare land unit condo complexes in Beaumont. Inflation financially would be rather insignificant, possibly. At last week's committee of the whole meeting, a comment was made about today's council meeting having the property tax bylaw being brought forward. I then contacted administration to determine if, pardon me, I missed a step, pardon me. We did request Mr. Blanco to bring back the actual number back in May. Last week's committee of the whole meeting led me to believe we are going to have to vote on this motion this evening as part of the property tax bylaw. So this past week, administration did provide a number of approximately 30,000 impact financially, and it would affect all condo units in Beaumont, not just bare land condos, which was the original intent of the motion for the presentation of the report last month by administration. So this evening, I'm just bringing forth the motion to be discussed by council to consider the tax break of roughly 5% for bare land condo and all condo units in Beaumont. I have some concerns and thoughts on this motion, but I'll yield the floor to my fellow councillors, any comments they may have before I offer a final comment. Mayor Stewart, before we take the vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, fair enough. You're the mover. You can reserve final comments.
Thank you.
I might have a question or two of admin on what their professional opinion on the advisability of this is, but we'll open it up to Councillor Margot Swain first.
Yeah,
sorry.
Haven't I got a motion already on the floor?
Oh, sorry. Can I ask you to table your motion while we deal with this amendment?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Good. Councillor Margot Swain.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Danlock, for going through this process and bringing this issue forward. I think you're doing your due diligence of putting this motion on the table for council to consider. In trying to be consistent, anytime I'm voting against the motion, I want to make sure that my position is clear on this, and I will be voting against this. I am worried about the precedent that sets for the broader city of Beaumont, and I'm not sure where this could potentially end. There are many businesses, there are many, whether it's Fairland condos businesses that could potentially see this and come to the city and ask for a quote unquote discount. So for the reasons stated, I'll be voting against this motion. I just wanted to make that clear to be consistent with how I operate on council. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Barnhart.
Sorry, it might be the time of day, Mayor, but I'm just a little confused about process. Because we're voting on a bylaw, second reading of a bylaw. And now we've got a motion. And we were just doing that a little while ago, and we were told we couldn't vote on the motion during that bylaw conversation. We had to do a notice of motion and decide to bring it back at another date. So why is this one different?
I might need some help from legislative services here, but we're talking about amending, like second reading is I guess it's because it's applying document versus tax. I don't know. Legislative services.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, with the other bylaw, we did have the option to make that amendment. It was originally suggested to do as a notice of motion, but the option was there to add that amendment if we wanted to, but that's not the way that council has decided to go. So for this one, this is what they're requesting, is that we make an amendment to the bylaw.
I'm really having difficulty with the options we're being provided by administration. I just want to say that. And maybe CAO Schwartz, you can help us out a little here, but this is a very, very confusing process that we're going through here. And I'd like to understand it a little bit better. And I think the motion that Councillor Danlock put forward is definitely his right to bring that forward. But coming in the midst of a bylaw about property tax, like it's really throwing a monkey wrench in it for me. To me, it's another topic.
The Councillor Danlock's motion will in fact affect the bylaw, and it will have to be amended if it passes. So that's how it is able to be made at this stage of the game. And then you're going to vote on it. If you vote on it and it passes, it causes an amendment to bylaw 10021, and we'll have to make that change.
And then we'll pick Councillor Stout's motion up as amended.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, if it passes. Councillor Hendricks.
Hi, Your Worship. Thank you to Mr. Dollar then, if I can. Question, sir. If we now deduct dollars from our tax position for those who have Bearland condos, do we not then add that to the balance of our tax base, our residential tax base? How does that work?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hendricks. There could be two remedies to a potential motion that would pass around a 5% reduction to Bearland condos. One would be to offset that loss in revenue through a one-time transfer from reserve. The other remedy would be to actually pass along that $30,000 loss in revenue to the rest of the residents within Beaumont. And so essentially what you're doing is then increasing or going from a 0% tax increase to something different. Granted, it would be a slight increase, but an increase nonetheless.
So if I can, just a supplemental, Your Worship. So you're an employee, you get your pay is cut one time, but forever. Isn't that not perpetuity? Like, are we not doing this year over year over year? I mean, this isn't a one-time event, right? So it's not a one-time placement, not a one-time move on the books. This goes on forever.
So maybe just a little bit of clarification on this one. It's a little bit different than what was maybe done in the past with the city in terms of creating a separate mill rate for Bearland condos. The motion that Councillor Danlock has put on the table talks about cancellation. So a 5% cancellation in taxes for 2021. So a 1-year cancellation. If it was to be intended to go on a go forward basis, we'd probably look at some different mechanisms to do that. But essentially, if the motion passed, it would be for 1 year. If there was another desire to do it in 22, another motion would have to be tabled in 22 to do a further cancellation for that tax year.
Okay, so I guess back to our esteemed Councillor Danlick. Is this a one-time event? I thought this was an event in perpetuity.
Thank you, Councillor Hendricks. My understanding was, my intent was to have it debated as in perpetuity, as you put it, to be debated that way. I'll be having my vote. I'll be expressing my concerns in a moment at the end and how I plan to vote on this particular motion. As I brought it forward on behalf of citizens, that's part of our job as a council, and we all do it as best we can. But my intent, Councillor Hendricks, was that with the spirit of the presentation from the affected citizens, it'd be in perpetuity. Was my understanding. Now, if I worded, I thought the motion was done correctly. I thought it was. Thank you.
So I got a quick question. From a tax policy perspective, does this make good sense? I mean, what services are they actually not receiving that, like, were the claims valid?
So thank you for the question, Mayor Stewart. From administration's perspective, and considering a taxation policy, our recommendation would be not to proceed with this. I think one very simple way to look at this is from a property ownership perspective. And in Bearland condo scenarios, what you're talking about is private roads that the city is not looking after, as one example. And that's very similar in a lot of ways as to any resident in Beaumont, their private driveways. We do not plow the driveways. We do not plow private roads. And so that's not something that your tax dollars get collected and a service provided for. And so these are situations where, recognizing there is some uniqueness in terms of how these condo associations are set up, but purely from a land or a property ownership perspective, this is no different than any household or any business where we're creating that separation between city-owned assets and private assets.
Thank you very much for that explanation. That clarifies where I need to be on this. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by final comments from Councillor Danlick, and we're going to call the question on this amendment.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak briefly to why I won't be supporting the amendment. The precedent that an exemption like this sets is concerning to me. You know, if I'm a business owner, a property owner, or someone else who perceptively or in reality doesn't use any other service in Beaumont, then, you know, do I get a deduction because I don't use the pool as much or the rink as much? Or, you know, if I'm a business owner, do I get a deduction because you don't plow my snow? I have to pay to plow my own snow and such. And I'm just really concerned with the precedent that sets. And I believe historically that council had, made exceptions and then come out of those exceptions. And it was really tough historically on through that whole process. So anyhow, I wouldn't be supporting the motion put forward by Councillor Danlick tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor Stout and Barnhart both put their hands up after I tried to close debate. So we'll allow it this once, but then this is it. I am calling the question regardless of who puts their hands up after this. Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that I was a little tardy there, and I'll try and keep this quick. I'm not supporting the motion either. I just wanted to explain why. Is that for all the reasons that have already been mentioned, for setting a precedent for others, for the fact that this is not really a fair comparison. But also, there's another one, which is that we pay property tax is a mechanism that to fund municipal services and facilities that it's not according to how much of those you consume. It's according to how much you can contribute according to your means and wealth. So if I live in a house, a $200,000 apartment with my spouse and children, then the facilities I require from the services and facilities I get from the city are exactly the same as if I live in $1 million mansion, but I will pay, because it's based on property tax, 5 times more. So the principle is that, you know, everybody uses the facilities according to and services according to their needs, but every resident pays according to their means by basis of a property tax and by basis of an assessed value of their property. So yeah, we get away from that if we then say, well, some groups, they consume a bit less, so they should pay less property tax. That's not how property tax is assessed or what it's meant to do. So I'm opposed to doing this for that reason as well.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart.
And I'll keep it short and sweet, Mayor. I also, for all the reasons that have been said, don't believe that this is the right move to make. I think we live in a community. We all share the cost based on the way property taxes are assessed. So I also will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, Councillor. Councillor Daniluk to wrap up, then call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Council, for your debate and your consideration of this situation. As you know, part of our job as council is to bring forward the concerns of citizens, which is what exactly what I did and which we all do from time to time. I'm in a unique situation where I did bring the motion forward on behalf of the citizens concerned, but I find myself also in opposition to my own motion. And my job is to bring it forward, not necessarily vote for it. Initially thought they had a reasonable concern and a reasonable case to be considered differently, but Mr. DeBlanco's report and also subsequent information from administration made it very clear that this would not affect, does not bear land, all condo owners and possibly all businesses in Beaumont, which is not how property tax is supposed to work. So at this point, I'm also going to actually oppose my own motion, but it's a procedural thing. It does sound rather odd, and it's odd for me to say it, but I think that this, for all the reasons my fellow councillors have stated, I'm prepared to vote on the motion. Thank you, Mayor Stewart, and thank you, Council, for your consideration.
Call the question. All those in favor? Who am I missing? 2, 3. Councillor Munkoff, Swain, where are you? There you are. And that motion is defeated unanimously. Councillor Stout, will you pick second reading back up from the table, please?
Yes, I move second reading of, just give me a moment, second reading of Bylaw 10021, property tax and supplementary property tax bylaw.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. I'd like to move that council unanimously approve the move to third reading this evening of bylaw 1001-21 1000-21 property tax and supplementary property tax. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. And I will move third reading of bylaw 1000-21 property tax and supplementary property tax. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us to councillors' inquiries and reports. We'll start with councillor inquiries. Do members of council have a question for administration this evening? Councillor Hendricks. You're on mute, councillor.
Thank you. Question for the administration regarding the sound shadow study on the BSRC cooling tower discussion. Just like to get an update.
Mr. Schwartz or Mr. Dollar?
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Councillor Hendricks, the study, from what I understand, has been completed. And we are just working through the sound consultants and some engineering services just to see what can be done and actually get some high-level costs around some of the solutions that have been proposed, so that we can come back to council either with just a kind of an update that something specific has been done, or potentially a more fulsome report providing some options on some different approaches that could be taken, and then proposing a potential solution and looking for some approval from council. So we're just trying to get a little bit more information. We're expecting to have that back to council sometime in May, or at least provide an update to council in May.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dollar. Okay, Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could have a quick question to administration regarding, there was some damage done to a sitting bench on the southwest corner of the Ken Nickel facility. Some paving stone bricks around the bench itself were damaged a few weeks ago, and I believe it's been into the works to get it repaired. Just an update, if you could, Mr. Schwartz, on the progress of that repair work, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Danilek. If I recall, the brick should have been picked up today, but a work order has been submitted, and the bench will be removed and then repaired. It will be removed this week and repaired, should be back in place by next week.
Thank you very much.
Seeing no further hands raised for questions, do members of council wish to make a statement this evening? Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yep, please.
Again, there, sorry. This past Saturday, I was involved with cleaning up some of the ditch areas around Beaumont. Lawrence Selowich, a citizen here in Beaumont, and I did it last year and did it again this year. I just wanted to thank council and administration for their support on this. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk and Councillor Stowe were able to attend, and they picked up some garbage with their family. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk and Mr. Stowe came along as well too, and administration did a very good job of picking up the garbage bags right after they were distributed. So we had probably 20 people come out this year. We had 12 last year, 20 this year. We picked up probably 42 bags of garbage around the city. Great job done by their local citizens. And you'd be surprised how many masks I was picking up in the ditches. It was there a year ago. This year, it was all disposable masks, and they're disposed of on the streets. So people who are disposing masks in the streets, shame on you. There were lots of them. So pick your masks and put them in the garbage, please, along with everything else that should be in the garbage in the first place. But again, thank you to the citizens involved. It was a great little event, and much appreciated. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very much, Councillor Danlock. That was great. I appreciate that. Owing to time, I just have two items that I'd like to cover tonight, and some of it you've already heard about. We've had two relatively big things happen in the region in terms of regional collaboration. We announced that we signed on to the Collaborative Economic Development Initiative that was born out of the COVID-19 response that didn't happen at the EMRB. But it's nice to see that we have 13 municipalities all working forward to try and attract investment into our region and cut the red tape. So that's a very significant event that just happened. As well, we are the Shared Investment for Shared Benefit Task Force doing something similar but different. Just wrapped up its final task force meeting. So we now do have a model to if projects come up in the region that are reasonably significant, to share costs among all 13 members of the EMRB. So two really significant events that just happened in terms of collaboration. Lots of hard work has been put in by the mayors and the CAOs on all those events and the working groups with the EMRB. So appreciate all the staff time that's gone into this, and we'll just go from there. Just as a reminder, COVID-19 is circulating through our community. Please follow the public health guidelines. Wear your masks, stay social, stay 2 meters distant, don't gather indoors. Please, we need to bend down this curve. CAO's updates next up. CAO? You're on mute. You're on mute, CEO.
That's funny. Sorry about that. I'll be very brief because we got a number of items that we still need to go. So a couple things I'll just mention is starting May 3rd, you're going to see Range Road 241 closed for the bulk of the summer, and that's due to upgrading and paving, a council approved project. And I'm also wanted to just mention that we have received a number of complaints in the Triumph area, in the area where we recently put a crosswalk up last year to try and provide some traffic calming. I just want to assure the people in that area that we have both municipal enforcement and the RCMP actively monitoring the area, as we are also conducting traffic studies to come up with some other traffic calming mechanisms. So that's in partnership with our planning department and the infrastructure. So we're very aware that it's happening, and we're very active on trying to fix that problem. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Thank you very much, CAO. Moving on to correspondence. Excuse me, item 12A. We as council have received a letter from Mayor Snodgrass from the town of High River. He has requested in that letter, I'm not going to go through it, I'm going to assume council has read it. He would like us to write a letter to the provincial government, to Premier Jason Kenney, Minister Sonia Savage, requesting that the Alberta Energy Regulator stop all activities associated with coal exploration permits on the Category 2 lands that were approved prior to February 8th, 2021. He would like us to do that. Is there a member of council that's willing to move that motion, that we provide that letter? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Item 13A, notices of motion. Councillor Munkoff-Swain, we will have the clerk introduce it, and then we will discuss it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. In accordance with the meeting procedures bylaw, once a notice of motion is made, it will be placed on the next regular council meeting agenda in which the elected official who made the notice of motion is present. At the April 13th, 2021 regular council meeting, Councillor Munkoff-Swain made the following notice of motion. The council direct administration to A, establish a steering committee focused on the development of an arts facility in Beaumont that reports to council. The steering committee should be established by May 31st, 2021 and consist of up to 10 members from the public, experts in arts facility construction and administration. B, work with the steering committee to establish goals and objectives for the success of the steering committee and report back to the July 2021 committee of the whole. C, identify an appropriate budget amount to effectively run the steering committee and an appropriate revenue stream to fund the steering committee and report this information back to the July 2021 committee of the whole. Administration is looking for direction on how council wishes to proceed.
Councillor Munkoff-Swain, the floor is yours to make the motion and then present your opening arguments.
Thank you, Worship, and I'll move that motion. I won't repeat it. I think it's on the floor there. So
appreciate that.
If you're okay, I'll just make a few opening comments just to provide some context around that, and really just to talk about the purpose of it. So what is the purpose of this notice of motion? In short, it's about finally getting some action on a performing arts facility in Beaumont. We've had many conversations about this topic, but it hasn't seemed to have really gone anywhere. I've heard council talk about the need for a performing arts theatre in Beaumont on many occasions. We've had presentations from the Beaumont Society of the Arts. We've conducted a feasibility study. We keep having these conversations and say, yeah, this is good. But it seems like we, including myself, got a bit intimidated by the price, and then nothing really happened. So the steering committee is designed to have a focused, dedicated individuals led by administration with a simple goal. And that goal is to bring ultimately to bring a yes or no decision to council on whether we build a performing arts facility. I think we've all said that we want it. The engagement from the Parks, Rec and Master Plan agrees that we need it. The BSA presented to us many times that the need for it. So I just want us to get to a point where we get an up or down vote on this. So you'll note that I've asked for administration to pull this committee together and not council. I think that's obviously very deliberate. I'll talk about the other members in a second. And there is some timelines attached to it, and they're pretty aggressive. but I think they're highly motivated individuals, both within the city and outside that are willing to lend their time for this. It's deliberately led. The committee would be deliberately led by administration with members of the public and experts in construction and arts facility design, etc. I don't think it's council's job to pick these individuals. I recommend the way the motion is worded is leaving that to administration. And I truly see this as not an advisory committee where we sit around where the committee sit around and talks about it. This I'm hoping is a roll up your sleeves, get to work, bring a proposal for council to vote on. You'll see in the motion that, again, very deliberate, that I added that the committee reports back to council, so we're informed throughout the process. So this is not a committee that just does some work and we hear back in 18 months on how they're going. The first step, as you'll see, is that once the committee is stood up, that they discuss and identify their goals and objectives, and then also provide a budget in order to execute the plan to be able to bring that decision forward to council. And that's targeted to bring back the July committee at the whole meeting. A couple of other points I just wanted to make. You may wonder why do we need another committee on this? What about the Beaumont Arts Council? All that sort of thing. So just for starters, the Beaumont Arts Council, or the BAC, there was never intended to be the mechanism to build an arts facility. We all went through and read the terms of reference. It talks about meeting quarterly, and it's really to oversee the arts policy that we have. Nothing to do with the facility. And so the suggestion for this motion is to have a deliberate focus group looking at that performing arts center here in Beaumont. I think we saw the numbers that are performing arts, like in terms of cost, could cost us with all the bells and whistles. And to be honest, that scared me. I saw the big, large numbers, and I was like, oh, okay, this seems pretty intimidating. But we never really had someone go through that, look at it critically. What could we cut off? What are the grants that are out there? How can we potentially pay this? And I think that's what this committee could get to. I don't expect a decision in front of council before the end of this election, but if we establish this committee, I think this is a first real tangible step to signal both to admin that council is serious about this, and to the public that we're serious, that we want this plan put in front of us. And we want to be able to vote for it as part of the budgeting process. So I'm hoping you'll support the motion tonight, and looking forward to that committee being established and then getting that report back in the July committee of the whole meeting. So I'll leave it there, Your Worship. Happy to entertain any questions from my fellow councillors or administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Munkoff-Swain. I do appreciate you bringing this forward. I remember a similar discussion we had a couple months ago. I will be supporting your motion tonight. I think it's the way to go if we're really serious about getting an arts facility in our community. But I will open it up to questions and comments from other members of council. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you, Noel, and thank you to Councillor Munkoff-Swain for bringing this forward. I definitely support the steering committee and the motion. A couple of logistical type questions just to consider. I don't think the questions will affect the motion, but just wanted to hear Councillor Munkoff's thoughts on a couple of things. He did speak to the steering committee composition and wanting to stay out of that and let administration get that sorted out. But the one thing I wanted to say there is that, volunteer burnout in the community, and in every community, it is a thing. And, what I wouldn't want to see is any local potential committee members, overlooked, right? Like, I think that the focus here needs to be making sure that, they identified heavily engaged, very talented people that we have in the community are included in this process. So that's a comment. Question for Councillor Munkoff-Swain, just around the committee lifespan. We're fresh off of the CCBCC committee being disbanded because their mandate kind of ended and it fizzled out. I don't think that there's a whole bunch of similarities with how that got there, but what I wouldn't want to see is that we weren't clear about the lifespan of the committee. So, once established, when does the mandate of the committee end? And is it upon completed construction, a year after, 6 months after the ribbon cutting, those types of things? And I know those details can come later, but I did want to ask that question just to see what you're thinking.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor, for the question. And so part of that asking the committee is to bring that proposal back to council. I've got my thoughts, but I think it's better for the committee to make that decision in terms of what their goals and objectives are. I think that personally, without leading too far, the first goal is to make sure that the committee is in place long enough to get that RFD in front of council where we go up or down, right? Similar to the process we had with the rec center. And then at that time, we would look at the composition, the makeup of it and say, okay, is this the right committee to carry forward the construction, or do we need to entertain a third party similar to what we did to help execute the construction if we voted for it? I'm not saying that ultimately I would get to a yes vote. I'd obviously need to consider the cost implications, what this means to our borrowing limit, all that sort of thing. I just need that decision in front of me, and ultimately to put this issue in front of us. So my initial thoughts with this, Steve, is to get to that RFD, get in front of council, and then when we got to that RFD, if we voted no, then obviously the committee would disband. If we voted yes, part of that discussion would be to figure out, okay, now what is the next step? How do we go forward and implement it? So that's kind of the rough time frame that I'm thinking about. But again, I want to make sure that I'm no expert in this field. I want to make sure that administration has an opportunity to bring the committee and the construction experts, people who have built these facilities, forward to provide a realistic time frame, and that's something in front of us.
Yeah, thank you. And I anticipate how you'll answer the next question. And so I'll answer it myself after I ask it. But how often would the committee report back to council? And let's hear what the committee says. How often they should report back. And just a question for administration: does administration possess the required skill sets, and do those skill sets have the time to get this completed based upon the stated timelines?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. Yeah, we believe that we can pull this together, and yeah, we have no concerns on our end.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the questions, Councillor Mokoff-Swain, and the answer, Mr. Schwartz.
Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Daniluk.
Hi, your worship. Thank you. And to the administration question, then I'm assuming that Mr. Schick is still bringing back his report regarding the CCBCC.
Yes, that's correct.
And what's the timing on that?
I'm not certain, but Mr. Dowler might be able to help us out here, but I think it's in May as well, is it not?
Yeah, that's correct. We are looking for probably the last meeting in May to bring back the report on CCBC.
Right. And with this committee, we'll be providing them with all the intel from all the different sites that we've already reviewed, and certainly all the reports that we've completed to date, so that they're not starting from scratch.
If I could speak to that, that's absolutely my intention, Councillor Hendricks. From my perspective, the motion, I'll let administration speak. But yeah, the point is we keep getting these reports and these feasibility studies sent to us, and then they don't seem to go anywhere. So I would hope that the intention of this committee would be to soak up all that information that has been provided, all the studies, and then take a look at that and analyze and bring that as a path forward. That's my intention. But if your question was for administration, I'll let them answer that.
Very similar response. Yeah, the intention would be to provide them all the background information. The one piece that I would also add is, I think this would be, although it's not mentioned in the motion, what we would come back with council is a terms of reference for the committee. And the committee would go through that process, obviously, of building that terms of reference, but that would be one output or outcome that would kind of happen almost immediately. And within that, it would talk about and make reference to some of the things that were done in the past, and building on that information to come to that ultimate outcome that council's looking for with the committee.
Okay, Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. A brief comment and a quick question. I'm in favor of this notice of motion. This council has been a council of action, right from the rec center, multi-use field being built, 4 Diamonds, dog park, increasing our service levels, keeping tax increases low. We've been a council of action. This goes the same vein. We're a council of action, want to move things forward. So I support the motion for that reason, and I thank you for bringing it to the table. My question is, I think it was half answered a moment ago from Councillor Mokoff-Swain, in terms of the expectations from the steering committee. Are we envisioning that they will come back to us in the future with a recommendation based on size, requirements of the groups? As you know, the consultant's report came back with a very wide range of 3 different styles of building with very wide range of facilities within those buildings. And us being not theater people, we're not sure what exactly is needed versus what is wanted. So is the steering committee going to come back and give us, a recommendation for this style of building, this sort of budget and location? Is that sort of the idea? I think it is, but just to clarify, if you wouldn't mind, please, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, again, wanting to make sure that they have the opportunity to provide that. But yes, that's my intention, that we get something tangible that we can vote up and down on, and follow a similar process. As we went through, there may be 3 options that we consider, and council will, look at those as we go, just like we had with the rec center option. We had a couple of options in front of us. And so the point was the steering committee would walk us through, make sure that someone is actually owning this, leading this, making sure this appears on council agendas and gets ready for a budget process. So yes, that is certainly the intention, not to come back with hey, we think that we should build it. I want to know where, when, how much, all that sort of stuff. That should be part of the package, and would expect Mr. Dowler mentioned about that terms of reference. That's what I'm getting at with my goals and objectives. Maybe that would have been a better wording, but certainly would anticipate that, and we would debate that, those goals, objectives / terms of reference, that kind of high level discussion in July, that committee of the whole, just to make sure that council agrees that the direction that this committee is going on, we want to let them do the work, but we just want to make sure that we agree on the direction.
Good, thank you. Your answer is what I was expecting, but just want to clarify for people listening at home and for council, just to clarify, is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barnhart. Then we'll wrap debate and call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart, and thank you, Councilor Monkoff-Swain, for bringing it forward, because I think this is what we need to get it done. I would have called it a task force, but I think it's a steering committee, same kind of thing. Essentially, the groups have, I think, from what information I have not been able to find the person or the administrative support that they needed to get this thing to the place that it needs to go, and that is to have it determine what's the next steps and get it done. And I think what I'm seeing here being proposed, which of course the devil's in the detail of the terms of reference, but I trust our administration will pay attention to those details. And the membership, of course, has to be committed to getting it done. And I believe they want it done as much as we want it done, but we don't know what it is yet. I guess that's the one question I have. By establishing the steering committee, are we in essence saying whatever comes forward, we're going to say yes to? Because I know that's not possible. People need to have some scope, some direction. They're bringing forward a recommendation. I think that's what I'm hearing, or a series of options. We'd like to know where we're all sitting on this, and the different groups and the different individuals that are involved. Have I got that right, Councillor Monkoff-Swain? I'm asking you as the proposer of the motion. This doesn't say it's a done deal. This says bring back your preferred options. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Councillor Barnhart. That's exactly the intention. Is I want council to be able to look and review the options and vote up or down. A yes vote tonight doesn't mean that you are voting for an arts facility where you've got no idea where it is going to be, how much it's going to cost, all that sort of stuff. It's just about, let's get someone assigned. And to be fair to administration, I don't think we've ever given them direction specifically to bring this information back. We've kind of asked them to do studies, and so now this direction is to clearly tell administration that we want this decision in front of us. Doesn't mean we're supporting it up or down. It's just we want this decision, so that I think it's only fair to the arts community and to the greater city of Beaumont, and whether the council of the day thinks that we need to build a performing arts centre. So absolutely, the vote tonight is just to get that process going. And then there's still multiple decisions at budget time and on whether we move forward with it.
And did I hear the terms of reference coming back before the committee is selected, or is the committee going to be selected and they're going to form the terms of reference? How did the administration say they were going to do that?
It's going to be no committee. Mr. Dowler?
I think looking at the motion leads me to believe that the terms of reference would be developed by the committee. And that's just my read into it. I'm not sure what Councillor Monkoff-Swain's intent was. I think administration could do it either way, but the way I look at the motion, the way I would read it is that the committee would develop the terms of reference.
And that, just to speak to that, that is my intention. And the reason being, while we've got great to have an administration person or people assigned to it, before, we want to recruit experts in this field, right? And they can help develop that. They've been through this multiple times, and hopefully they've been through this multiple times in different jurisdictions. And so to have them help develop that terms of reference, develop those goals and objectives, bring them back to us at council versus administration kind of, making up what they perceive to be the best, and then recruiting people and then them saying, well, I wish we had scope to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So I think we just need to get the experts in the room who are committed, driven to get this done, bring that terms of reference back to council so we can say, yep, this is the direction generally that we're hoping you guys can go away and come back and report to us on a as needed basis.
Could I just suggest, though, if I can be so bold as to say this, that the administration can't sit back and wait, at least I don't think you're saying you are, for them to call a meeting, for them to write the terms of reference. I think we need to help them and facilitate that process. And I do believe we passed budgetary dollars for some staff time to assist the arts community. So I'm hoping that there's administrative time to facilitate this and not for somebody to come back in July and say, the group didn't get together. I don't want that to be the case because someone didn't call the meetings or they didn't get together.
Couldn't agree more, Councillor Barnhart. And I'll wait for administration to comment, but that's absolutely the point of this motion, to let direct administration to say, this council is directing administration to pull this together, not to be a side part of a council that kind of sits and discusses it, but administration is leading this and they're accountable to pull that together. And if no one from the committee or outside steps up, then they'll come forward. So that is absolutely my intention, so that we get some drive on it. Administration, is that how you are interpreting or see it from the motion?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, and that would be my interpretation. And I think the way I would have this kind of envisioned in my own mind, at least right at this moment, would be administration would start to develop the terms of reference as a draft. And that would be kind of the first order of business for the committee meeting, is to go through that terms of reference, make sure everybody's comfortable with it or make whatever changes are appropriate. And then get back to council, given the timelines that are in the motion. So it is taking a proactive approach, I would say, around developing the terms of reference, getting this thing stood up, such that we can meet the timelines as outlined in the motion.
Okay, fair enough. So Councillor Munkoff-Swain, do you have closing comments you wish to make? And then I'm going to call the question.
No.
Councillor Danluck? I will be making another exception if I let you speak tonight.
But my hand was already up, sir. Very quick question, if I may.
But you put it up after I said Councillor Dan.
Then I withdraw. No problem. No problem. I withdraw.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All in favor? 2, 3, 6. Councillor Danluck, still looking for you. I think it went up and down, but I'm not sure. Thank you. That carries unanimously, 7 votes to none. Appreciate that. Item 13B, small business support grant. That one's mine, but I'll let the legislative services introduce it. Then I will speak to what the update is.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. At the March 23rd, 2021 regular council meeting, Mayor Stewart made the following notice of motion. The council established a small business support grant to allow our local businesses to access professional expertise, such as but not limited to accountants, to assist them in accessing the federal and provincial support programs. Grant to be a maximum one-time grant of $500 per business. Overall funding envelope to be $20,000 plus $3,000 in cost to administer the grant funded from reserves. Grant to be administered by the Leduc and Wetaskiwin Chamber of Commerce. This item was tabled to the April 20th, 2021 special council meeting. At the April 20th, 2021 special council meeting, Councillor Van Newkirk made the following motion in response to Mayor Stewart's May 23rd, 2021 notice of motion. that council table Mayor Stewart's March 23rd, 2021 notice of motion and bring the item back to the April 27th, 2021 council meeting to allow time for Mayor Stewart to approach the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce to offer first right of refusal and grant administration. Administration is looking to your worship for follow-up on your conversation with the BCC and for direction on how council wishes to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. In the interests of time, I will pick my motion back up off the table. I'm not going to go through all the discussion and the reasons that we had last week. If you wish to ask questions, that's great. I'll do it again. But the brief update I had with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce is they have agreed to do this in collaboration with the Leduc-Wetaskiwin Chamber. My English is not so good tonight. Leduc-Wetaskiwin Chamber has done this grant several times, and they're going to do it in collaboration with Beaumont Chamber. And so I will be amending my motion to add the grant to be administered by the Leduc and Wetaskiwin Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce. And both Chamber of Commerces are on board to get this done. So open it up for questions and comment, and then we'll call the question. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, no, big thank you to you, Mayor, for just pausing and checking that out. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the motion as amended, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, 7 votes. I do appreciate council supporting this motion this evening. I think this will be a great program to support the small businesses in our community as we move forward and try to come out of the pandemic. Appreciate that. Notices of motion. Is there any members of council wishing to make a notice of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to move into closed session? Councillor Mungo-Swain.
I can make that motion to move into closed session, worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. So we will just thank you to members of the public for being patient with us. We have emerged from our closed session and there are no business items or motions arising from the information presented in closed session. So therefore, I'd like to thank members of council for a great meeting. We had some really good discussions, some tough discussions, and some tough decisions that got made tonight, and appreciate your perseverance in getting through that. My thanks to administration for once again doing an admirable job of making sure we have the required information to make the decisions that we need to do. So I appreciate all the work that you've put in over the last 4 months, and look forward to continuing on as we try to wrap up some major projects here in the next 3 to 4. With that, we will call the meeting adjourned, and I will see you